Hey guys, if you're looking for a car, I'm going to recommend you somebody that I would reach out to myself. I'm going to talk about Jacob Cahill, who works out there at Rusty Drew and Toyota. He's a sales consultant and he offers a fun, low pressure car buying experience. He's up there in Jefferson City, Missouri at 2105 Christie Drive. Any type of car you need from used to new, he is the man to put you in the car. Okay, reach out to him. His number is 573-535-5656 at extension 542, or just reach out at jcahill at drewingauto.com. That's jcahill at drewingauto.com. I know the market right now, personally for me, has been very hard to negotiate. And, you got a lot of people that are really trying to put food on the table, and you can't blame them. But trust Jacob when he tells you he's trying to put you in the best car possible that you can afford. Thanks, guys. Hey, guys, we're going to get to the show in just a minute. But for right now, I want to talk to you about one of our sponsors. Sometimes when you're driving on the road, you start hearing that thudding going on. Maybe that oil change light comes on. You think, oh, shit, what am I going to do? That's when you should reach out to Action Automotive. Located in St. Robert, Missouri at 128 April Drive, Action Automotive is your place to go for everything from oil changes to engine and transmission swaps. I know personally the owners, Caitlin and Evan York, who are two wonderful people from my hometown, and they just had their newborn baby. They're open from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. If you got that oil light on, you're thinking about getting, it's time to switch out that 250,000 mile transmission on that square body you got going on. These are the guys you want to go to, okay? Reach out to them. That's Action Automotive in St. Robert, Missouri, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Benny and the Guest. With you, as always, me, Ben. I'm joined today by a special guy I work with, had the pleasure of working with the past year, Cody Sparkman. What's up, Cody?
How you doing?
Yeah, it's good to have you here, man.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
Me and Cody here, he brought me some of this nice little Johnny Walker. Try a little sip of it, because cheers, friend, anyway. Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
All right. Oh. Okay. We're going to talk to Cody a little bit about his life. Me and him have actually, we haven't even worked close together except for the past 2 months.
Yeah.
Where I've gotten to know him and his wife decently enough, and we just kind of have a lot of the same ideologies about life, and it's kind of nice to see some common sense in the world. So I wanted to get his perspective and what he's all about and what he's been through, because I know he got some stories for me. So we'll just kick it off, starting, if you could just tell me where you're from, kind of a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, what it was like, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Missouri, where we're at now. Small town, kind of small. It's not real small, but it's a suburb of St. Louis. It's Hillsboro. Born and raised there. My mom and dad still live in the same house that I grew up in. I went through the same school from kindergarten all the way through graduation. And then afterwards, I went to junior college there. And then eventually moved off to Southeast Missouri State in Cape Girardeau. Went to a third year of college there. And then stopped going to college, did some other things for a year and a half or so, and then eventually joined the Army.
Yeah. Let me ask you real quick about kind of jumping back a little bit. You kind of told me a little bit, when you were young, what drew you? Were you an outdoors guy? Were you an athletic dude? What was your? Because I know you talked about soccer a bit, but was that your main thing? Or?
Yeah, soccer pretty much controlled my life. That's pretty much all I did. I would wake up, do school, and then it's I played soccer year round growing up. I did rec leagues and then got into the rec league I played in did an all-star team within the league.
Yeah.
And then they would take that team and travel to tournaments around the state, and then over in Illinois, and then a little in Iowa and a little in Indiana. And then we would it was a recreational league. It didn't cost anything. Anybody could go play, but they took the all-star kids, basically is what they called it. And they started a program, and that little town now actually has a full blown club team they started.
Yeah.
That's the sole purpose for that team is to like train for tournaments. And they go to bigger ones now.
Jeez.
But yeah, I started soccer when I was like 3. As soon as I could, fell in love with it, and I played all the way through high school. And then starting at like maybe 7 or 8 is when that travel little rec league team started.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I got older, we aged out of those tournaments. So I went and tried out for a club team in St. Louis because like club soccer in St. Louis has been huge for years.
Mm-hmm.
I initially tried for a lower end team that was like Emil Dragicevic. I can't even pronounce the guy's name, but it's no longer a club. But I played there for a couple years, and then I got into used to be the Metro Strikers.
Okay.
I got into them later when Emil kind of went under because it was like just a smaller, I call it a farm team, just because it was like it wasn't anything huge. But then they had like back then they had Gallagher and everything, and then there was STLCC and I think Kolping. But I think Gallagher pretty much consumed up everybody, and now it's like it's either your St. Louis Soccer Club or your Gallagher. But yeah,
I didn't know there was that much stuff going on with soccer up there.
Yeah,
like,
dude, St. Louis
crazy.
is like I'm mind blown that it took St. Louis so long to finally get an MLS team because last year was the first year for their team, and it's like St. Louis, like they had the Ambush, and then the Steamers for a little while, which is kind of like an indoor team, I guess you'd call it, pro level.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything MLS level. But
Right.
now they have it, and it's like they had a good year. But I was like, the soccer scene in St. Louis it's always been huge in my eyes, unless a lot of people don't see it. But like growing up in the world of soccer, it was visible to me, I guess, because it was what I lived for.
Yeah.
And then I played for Jeffco. The junior college I went to, just did a walk-on, no scholarship, just played there for 2 years. And when I went to SEMO, they didn't have a team for men at SEMO.
Yeah.
So I played there on like I hung out with the fraternity. I was like a friends with benefits with a
Right,
fraternity,
yeah.
the Delta Chi's. I never like pledged or rushed or anything, but I hung out with them, had a bunch of friends there, and I
Yeah.
played on their like fraternity team within their rec leagues that they did. And then I also played at some rec leagues within the school. There was indoor and outdoor, just with a bunch of friends and like the fraternity guys.
How long were you at SEMO for?
A year.
Oh, okay.
I just went for a year.
Yeah.
I was going to school. I went to Jefferson College in Hillsboro. I got an associate's degree in the arts of teaching. I had the goal to be a high school shop teacher because I love building things. My high school shop teacher's name was Corey Schweitzer. He was one of our baseball coaches. He was awesome. And I thought shop class was fun. It was my favorite part of school besides sports. So I went to be a shop teacher. Well, when I was at SEMO, a whole bunch of programs kind of got cut and the market got flooded within like the high school. So there wasn't a lot of jobs. So I took a year off to rethink life. And I actually transferred out of SEMO to go to Missouri Baptist up in St. Louis because I met my wife at SEMO. We'll get into that later, but I met her at SEMO, and then she lived up kind of by Mobap. So I'm like, well, I'll try to get into school there just to finish my degree in something.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of stupid to stop as a junior and not finish it. And they were like, I had reached out to the soccer coach to see if they did walk-ons or anything. And he was like, yeah, come practice with us. And I went and did a practice with him. And like, as soon as we got done practicing, he's like, hey, we'll give you a scholarship. It was like $10K a year. And I think the tuition at the time was like $6,000. So it would have covered tuition and then
plus like rent or something.
Plus housing, and it would have covered food and everything. I'm like, well, cool, I'll jump on that. But I didn't need it because I just lived with her because she was, 20 minutes down the road. So instead of paying that kind of money for living in a crappy dorm, I just stayed with her and her family. Kind of mooching, I guess. But anyway, I did that and played for. It was short lived because I had like I don't know, I guess an arrogance that I wanted to. I was never on a point. I'm not one to brag, but I was never on a point on a team where I wasn't critical. Like I was always like, I had to be on the field.
Yeah, you were one of the key players.
I was one of the key players. Like I always was like, I was always one of the captains. I was always the heart and soul. I could play throughout high school at Hillsboro. I played even on my club teams. I would play a striker, which is like the forward up front. I would play. I spent my freshman year in high school. I started varsity. I was a center mid or an attacking center mid, depending what we were doing. And then my sophomore year, our 3 of our 4 defensemen had graduated.
Yeah.
So they put me back as a sweeper, which was, I don't know if you know anything about soccer, but
Nope,
so
not
in
a
soccer, you have typical formation will be like a 4-4-2. So you'll have 4 defensemen, 4 midfielders, and then 2 forwards.
Okay.
But we would run like 4 defensemen, but instead of being flat back, we would have 3, and then there would be a sweeper right behind them. And the sweeper kind of it's kind of an old school tactic now, but sweepers would basically control the defense and control the play based on if sweeper had to be someone who could read the play as it was unfolding and see the game. So he would like adjust the defenseman based on what was going on and play position. He would position himself to set up or to block off passes.
Okay.
So
he's like the head defenseman, basically.
Yeah, it was like the leader of the defense and the last line of defense. But typically it's somebody. We had a senior, his name was Kyle Helms, did it when I was a freshman, and I learned a lot from him. But you had to be able to read the play, intercept the play, but you had to be confident within yourself to know when to just clear it or to take the extra touch under pressure to get a play, so you're not just giving the ball right back to him.
Yeah.
So it's like it was a lot of mental capacity, I guess, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. And then junior year, I went back to play in midfield and a lot of striker because we got some defensemen. A new defenseman came in from a move who was a good sweeper. So I went back to playing more of an attacking center mid and striker. And then my senior year, I kind of played everywhere, but more defense or more like the attacking center mid again.
Okay.
And then I did the same thing basically for my club teams. And then I was more of a midfielder for the college teams I played on. I like to be in mid because you got the ball a lot. You were always in the scene.
Yeah, you're kind of in the action of it, right?
And I was quick, but I wasn't necessarily I wasn't ever a speed demon, but I could put people into positions to get good opportunities.
Yeah.
I was always better at setting other people up than I was about me getting the goal myself. And if I scored, it was usually a pretty far shot or something like that.
Yeah.
It was never really up close and personal. With a striker, crashing on the goalie was always kind of like a shot at like the top of the box or something.
Okay.
But yeah, I did that. Soccer, God, I played for 17 years almost, from 3 to I was like 20, 21 when I quit.
Yeah.
And then pretty much joined the Army. And then I grew up like the outdoors. So you asked about the outdoors. I grew up hunting. Fishing. My dad still to this day lives and breathes everything whitetail hunting.
Of course, yeah.
Loves turkey hunting. Did a lot of camping and fishing growing up. We went on camping trips every year on the Big Piney right behind the base, actually.
Oh, okay.
Did a lot of fishing there. And then
did you not fish a lot up at or like do any of that stuff in St. Louis, or did you guys kind of?
We did. We had some neighbors that had some farm ponds, and there was a couple of rivers, but the rivers up there. We never had a boat, so like we couldn't go out on the river and like bank fishing from those rivers, because you got like Big River and the Merrimack and like the Mississippi and Missouri are just big.
Yeah.
And they're just dirty. They're nasty. Yeah. And it's like we weren't really ones that just go fish to fish. We would fish for food or like hunt for food. Like if it ever came to the day where we didn't eat like deer.
Yeah.
Or turkey, I would never hunt them. It's because there's no point. Like I would never shoot them just to shoot them.
Right. Yeah. I never caught that. I don't know if there's that many hunters like that like go out there and just shoot.
Not so much.
Yeah.
It's like even the ones that are like people. There's a lot of advocates that go against them, but a lot of the hunters that they're like, well, these guys are trophy hunters. It's like, yeah, but the trophy hunters probably eat the meat.
Yeah, they still eat it. Yeah.
If not, they're donating it to a local village who's going to live for a month or two on that animal.
Yeah, Ted Nugent talks about it, dude. Yeah. Ted Nugent's like, okay, the trophy aspect is part of the game. Like, it's part of this like thing that people do, but I think he said like 80-90% of hunters, like that's not what they're going for. It's just it is a trophy still.
Yeah.
It's something that you worked hard for that you earned. So like, can't take away the trophy aspect of that. But like,
Absolutely.
people are still eating it and utilizing every bit of it because
Yeah.
that's how humans have done it.
Yeah, as much as you can.
Yeah.
Every bit. Yeah, it's the hunt. Like I don't know. I love hunting. I don't think I love it more now as an adult than I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
I used to remember. I just look back now and remember being irritated that my dad would come in at like 4:00 to wake me up. He's like, "Hey, you ready to go?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, man, it's 4." But now I'm like, I mean, I wake up at 4:00 every day anyway now, so it's like I enjoy the pursuit. I love being in the woods and watching the world wake up.
There's nothing better than that twilight, like the turnover from dark to sun up, and
Absolutely.
that you feel it, and
Yeah.
it's so hard because I try to every time I'm in a stand, you try to watch that and see it turn.
Yep.
And you don't really see it turn though, like it kind of happens. You watch the event, but it's beautiful though.
Yeah,
that's to the point. It's beautiful.
It's a magical moment that lasts like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. It's
Yeah.
like it's dark, dark, dark. Oh, beautiful, and then bam, it's daylight. It's
Yeah.
like, dang it, where'd it go? But it's awesome to catch it. Now my oldest, is getting into hunting pretty big. But I'm definitely into it a lot more now than I was. But yeah, I grew up hunting. I mean, my dad and his brother, my uncle Mark, hunted together for years, and we used to go, like rent farms around the state and go hunt conservation land. And like I remember being like 4 and 5 years old, and like my dad would be up in a stand already set, and my uncle would climb up with me on his shoulders, like clinging to his
Oh,
ears.
yeah.
And then my dad would grab me, pull me in, tie me in, and then my uncle would go away, go hunt. And then at the end of it, my uncle would come back and help him
process.
get me down. And we did that for quite a few years until I got big enough to climb up there. And yeah, as soon as I could hunt, as soon as I could take the hunter education course in Missouri, I did. I think I was 11.
Yeah.
Went and did it with my dad. We got our little cards the same day, and then just been hunting ever since. When I get back, when I'm home from the military. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah, I love it.
Do you what I wanted to know, I had when you met your wife, I wanted to jump back to that. So
Okay.
you were down at
We're at SEMO.
SEMO still, right?
Yep.
So how'd that go down?
So I was down there. They had I chose SEMO because it had one of the SEMO Southeast Missouri State University. It's in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. I had a buddy that was down there, and it was my best friend growing up. He was down there from freshman year to he graduated, and I was like, hey, I reached out. He was finally moving out of the dorms, and we got an apartment together. I'm like, that's a simple system. And then SEMO had the industrial technology and education degree, which essentially is the shop teacher. So it was all building trades and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So through that system, I could become a shop teacher. So I was like, I'll go to SEMO, finish my 2 years, and then I'll be done and I'll get a job. So we went down there, and he's the one that got me affiliated with the Delta Chi fraternity. He had a bunch of friends that he went to school with in high school that were in there. So just by association, they became friends of mine. We hit it off pretty well. And I got a job. I went down early, so school started, I think, in August is when classes actually started. And I moved down in like May to get the apartment because we had signed for it, and Donnie was already down there
It's
anyway.
a little early, yeah.
So we went down early, but I wanted to try to find a job and get kind of settled and into somewhat of a routine before college started.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was during the junior college, I was still living with my parents, and I was 20. I guess I was 20, and I was kind of ready to move out on my own a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was like me dipping the toes of the water of not being, I don't want to say being a free man, but being a free man,
Yeah.
being on my own.
I think to that, not to interrupt you, I think you're 32. Are you
34 now.
34? Yeah, and I'm 30. I'll be 31 next week.
Yep.
I think a lot of us, and maybe in these rural areas it's a little different, but like us to like 26, maybe 27, are kind of the last breed where we had that. We felt a push to move out.
Yeah.
When we were 18. Hey, I'm gonna be on my own now. I'm an adult. Yep. I don't think that's there anymore, really.
No.
Like I think, we bring up the Army all the time, like ad nauseum, but like I talk to kids that they're 19, 20 years old, and they're in the Army, and their parents are still paying their phone bill.
Yeah, but,
and,
oh yeah.
And you're like, dude, you make enough. Like,
Yeah.
pay your bills. Like, you
Yeah.
have like 3 bills now.
Oh,
pay
yeah.
them. I just real quick, I just always want to touch
Oh.
on that because I think it's so crazy that you don't have a desire to be on your own anymore. Even if like, yeah, it's hard financially, but like that's the whole point. You're a young adult. You're trying to make it. It's gonna suck for a little bit, but I wish more people had that drive.
Yeah, I think I agree wholeheartedly. I see the amount of people who come in that don't know how to use like a washing machine. Like, because
Yeah.
I did my first 2 years as a BCT drill. It's like I had to teach kids how to use washing machines, how to like basically do hygiene because like they just didn't do it. I mean, you as AEIT, you still see that they don't do it sometimes.
Online banking,
Online
understanding
banking,
it,
cell phones, making sure their stuff works properly. I think a lot of it falls on, I don't like to rip on parents, but I think a lot of it falls on their parents as well.
Yeah.
Because like my parents, I'm sure yours did the same, but like my parents, like, I mean, I got a bank account at a pretty young age.
Yeah.
I did work like side jobs. My dad is a union construction worker. Just retired about a month and a half ago, but he did like, we would do a lot of concrete jobs on the side. He would do roofing, building decks, building pole barns for people.
Oh yeah.
And he always took me. I mean, from the minute I was like, God, probably 8, I was walking roofs with them. I'd be like I may not be able to pour concrete or like move the wheelbarrow, but I was like making sure that stuff was cleaned up. I was making sure they had.
You're a little gopher.
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't run out of. They didn't run out of shingles if they were roofing. Like him and my uncle Mark were always roofing together.
Yeah.
And I would me and my cousin Jeremy would keep them supplied, so they didn't have to stop roofing. They didn't have to get up to go run to get their shingles. They didn't have to get their nails. We would just drop the little coils of nails in their pouch, and they just keep on nailing shingles down. And then they'd pay us. Like they would pay us well. They did good on their own. And then I mean, I was like, there was days. I mean, they did some jobs on roofs that were big, and they'd make like 10 grand, and they'd give me and Jeremy
Jesus.
$1,000 a piece. I mean, I was like 10, 12 years old. Like,
Roofing is one of the hardest jobs though
yeah.
ever. Like it's it's insane.
Those dudes, like construction workers in general, are like absolute savages. Like what they put their bodies through.
Oh yeah.
And like roofing, you're always on a slope. You're always bent over. You're always kneeling down. Like it's hard on the body.
Yeah.
But like my dad, my mom too. Like they taught me to work young. They taught me to save money. They didn't deny me if I wanted to spend my money. They would be like, "You're not gonna." They would guide me in a way that I didn't waste it on things that didn't provide joy, I guess you would say, or things that were like non-essential.
Yeah.
Like they were like, I want this toy, and they would just be like, "Yeah, go get it. Waste your money." You know, they guided me, but my mom taught me how to. She went with me, got my bank account set up. I mean, I was pretty young when I started piling in money like that, and they were there, you know.
Right.
And they taught me how to be. They prepared me
Present.
to be
They
an
were
adult.
present.
I mean, they didn't expect me to do my own laundry, but they made sure I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Because like it helped. They taught me how to cook. Like they taught me how to survive on my own. So by the time I was 18, like moving out at 18, I think I could have done it. I would have been perfectly fine. But I went to JUCO, and they're like, "There's no reason for you to move out now because your college is 15 minutes away. Just save your money." I'm like, "Okay." So like when I moved down there, it was like I was on my own. Like they were there if I needed support. Like if I couldn't afford rent that month because work was slow or whatever.
Yeah.
They would help me out. But for the most part, I didn't really. I had it. It was my truck was paid off. I had I was 2010, I guess, when I went there, and I had a '99 Chevy Silverado 1500. It was paid off. I paid $6,000 for that, and I didn't have any bills outside of a cell phone and like rent and like groceries, insurances. But those were pretty cheap for just me.
So at least you were put together. Like you
Yeah.
financially responsible, I guess would be the
Yeah.
be the term I would use. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I was not my first even from coming out of going to college and then all the way up to like my first 3 years in the Army.
Yeah.
it's a thing a lot of people aren't used to, like, or they don't learn it as much.
Yeah.
So that's good that you had that like going for you. Like, that's good.
Yeah.
So you got down there. You're trying to find this job. You're getting set up in the apartment.
I kind of went off on a wormhole there.
No,
So I got a job at Olive Garden.
Oh hell yeah!
I started applying to everything.
And that's where we go to.
I grew up doing all the construction, and I was an assistant manager at Hibbett Sports for a little while I was at the junior college. And then when I moved down there, like with going to school full time, living on my own, construction wasn't an option, and there wasn't a Hibbett there. So I was like, well, I started applying to whatever was available. And the first one that called me back was Olive Garden. They hired me to be a busser, and then I trained up to be a waiter and a bartender when I turned 21.
Right.
And I kept that the whole year.
Olive Garden rules.
Made a killing.
Olive Garden's the shit.
Yeah, dude. The all you can eat, the never ending pasta bowl.
Yeah,
man.
You're just taking those home.
Yeah. You just go in there like that was my dinner. Like I didn't have to buy food because I just got it while I was at work. You know that.
And it's pasta, so you're held over good. It's not shitty.
And then while you're working, you could snack on the breadsticks and the salad all you wanted, and you'd be full. So you could spend all your extra tip money on beer and alcohol.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so I went on, and then on December 10th. So I've been in school for like a few months. I had a girlfriend, but nothing serious. Just one from back home.
Yeah.
Nothing serious. Went on December 10th. I was going to. I closed down Olive Garden, and I went to Dirt Cheap because it's fun.
Oh,
and
hell yeah!
I got a 30 rack of PBRs.
Yeah.
And I used to drink Stag too.
Steak, taters, and gravy.
Yeah,
dude.
I used to go in there with Budweiser, but everybody at the fraternity would steal your beer.
Yeah,
because it's the good stuff.
So nobody took the Stag.
So nobody would steal Stag.
So
I would drink the shit out of Stag.
Yeah,
and then I would take PBRs. But I was walking in with a 30 rack on like this the fraternity house was an off-campus one, just this shitty old house in town.
Yeah,
and it had the side door, and I was walking in, and it was like midnight probably, and this girl and her friend were like running out the door, and like we kind of bumped into each other. Well, it was my future wife, Michelle.
Yeah,
kind of like we had like that moment where like we saw each other, and it was like
take my breath away.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I look back to like you ever see the Air Bud World Pup movie?
No.
Okay. No. Well, he first sees the girl, and he's like, there's like this girl singing Lucky Stars and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like just dumbfounded. That was me.
I thought of Wayne's World when he's like Dreamweaver.
Oh, 100%. Dreamweaver was blaring.
Yeah.
But so the way the fraternity house worked, they had like a basement under it, but you could only get to it from the outside, and that's where they were headed. Yeah. And the basement was like a
kind of like a college basement, right? Where they had parties.
It was a nightclub. It was a bar, and it was like where all the freshmen went to hang out because it was like they were chasing girls. That's what the freshmen fraternity Delta Chi's were doing. We're chasing girls, and that's where they were headed. And I'm like, oh, whatever. So I went in to hang out with the older dudes because we would go up. You ever play Asshole, the drinking game?
Yes.
We would play Asshole religiously upstairs in like the kitchen. And that's what we were doing. It was either you were in a Super Smash Brothers on 64 tournament or you were playing Asshole. So I was going in, and my buddy Mike Schmidt, he was the president of the Delta Chi. He's like tall, skinny, like Gumby looking dude, real skinny guy. He was like, "You all right, man?" Because like I was dumbfounded by the girl I just saw.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, "I don't know, man." And he's like, "Well, let's play." So we played for a little bit, and then it was probably like an hour. They came back up to get more beer from us for free, and then they turned and went back downstairs. I'm like, "Well, I'm going." So I went with them.
Hell yeah.
Followed them down, kind of.
Yeah.
A little bit late, but so I came down the stairs, and they had some old. They're from Waffle House, like the booths from like Waffle House, the old ugly yellow ones. Yeah. They had like 3 of those in there, but they had painted them red because the Delta Chi's are gold and red, so they got rid of the ugly yellow and painted them red. And
why do all these frats get the most random shit,
dude?
It's so cool though. It's so cool.
It's degenerates, man. We do the same shit now.
That's true.
We are privates.
Yeah, I got some wild
fraternities are literally military privates. That's all they are. But yeah, so I came down, and I was sitting. I went and sat down by a couple of our friends at the freshmen at one of those booths. And I was kind of like scoping the scene, looking for her, and she had on like some leather pants and this black leather jacket, and I was like dumbfounded by the black leather jacket and like this black hair
Yeah.
and a white scarf. Well, I wore.
She had black hair back then?
Yeah, she was a freak, dude. She was a freak.
Yeah.
Still is a little bit, but not as much. She's calmed down a little bit. I tamed her. But she, yeah, so it was an ugly sweater party. So I had on some like ugly, nasty jeans. And I had like this giant, I still have it. It's like a Mexican shawl looking thing that you saw like, remember, have you ever seen The Outlaw Josie Wales with Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
That
yeah,
sweater
the
thing
sweater,
he wore?
Yeah.
I was one of those. And I had this massive, like a big, like a scarecrow straw sombrero hat.
Yeah.
And I had taken, it was my drinking hat. I drank with it every single time I drank. And I had taken like the caps from beer bottles.
Bottle caps, you climp
and I would climp them all the way around it. And the whole thing was done. And I was starting to glue them on the actual thing. So
you know what's the problem is like, that's not like like I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that in so many places.
Yeah,
Like,
that was my hat. So I was sitting there, had my hat on, and she came up. And so there was a kid his name was Jordan Tingle. But he was hitting on this girl.
That's rough.
Yeah, it was rough. He was a good kid though.
Yeah.
But the girl wanted his hat or wanted my hat. He's like, "Can I borrow your hat? She wants to wear it." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, cool." So I gave it to him, and she was wearing it. Well, Michelle came up a little bit later, and she's like, "I want your hat." I'm like, "Okay." So I just took it off of her head and gave it to her.
Yeah.
And she put it on and went to walk away. I'm like, well, I want something of yours to make sure I get my freaking hat back because I got a lot of time invested into that hat. That hat's important. So she gave me her white scarf. So like we hit it off. She went and kept dancing, and then we started hanging out a little bit. Ended up spending the entire evening together. Well, night, I guess, because by this time it was morning.
This is a beautiful picture of you with the Outlaw Josie Wales sweater on with a white scarf.
Beautiful,
and
just like bleached white scarf.
And her with a leather jacket on and a sombrero with a bunch of crimped caps on.
Yeah. It was eventful.
Yeah.
But so we hung out and just kind of we finally went upstairs as the party started dying down and people left, and her and her friend ended up staying the night at the fraternity house. I was there. We basically just hung out in the living room all night, and it was basically an all-nighter. And then I very drunkily drove them to the dorms. I want to call them barracks, but the dorms.
Yeah, every time.
The next morning, en route to my apartment, so I could go pass out before I went to work the next day. And
you had work the next day.
Yeah, I had to work the next day. I worked almost every day because I was greedy and I wanted the money.
It's crazy you can recover like that though when you're younger. Like the first
don't-
hour of work sucks, but then you're like, I'll get it.
I don't think I had a liver. Like I'm pretty sure I had destroyed my liver to where it didn't really matter anymore.
It just passed through. Yeah.
It was just like basically you could drink it sitting on the toilet. It was coming out within seconds. It's kind of a gross visual, but it's how it was. If you've been to college or in the Army, you understand it. But yeah, so I dropped them off. I got her number and then never called her. She found out. I was like, I thought she was there. She didn't go to SEMO. She was from St. Louis, just visiting her friend.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this isn't going to work out. She's never going to be back. So she left. We never talked again for a while. And then I was back home. I think it was for Easter. It was in March. And I reached out to her. I was sitting at home. My mom and dad were at work. And I was like just kind of scrolling through my phone.
Yeah.
And I saw her number. And I just shot her a text. I'm like, hey, do you remember me? And like I was single at this time. Me and the other girl had broke up. So I hit her up and she was like kind of like playing like she didn't, but she did.
Yeah.
And she got around to it and I was like, well, I'm in town if you want to hang out. So we had a real classy date. We went to Taco Bell and she got a cheese roll up, like remember the little cheese roll up?
Yeah, we get them for the kids.
And I crushed the quesadillas because I mean they're great.
Oh yeah.
And then we just kind of drove around Eureka a little bit.
Okay.
That was like we did Eureka because it was like she was in.
It was kind of middle
of the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like where I'm at to where she's at, Eureka was like 25 minutes for each of us. So we just met there.
She what town did she live in? What was it?
She's been all over. She lived all over St.
Yeah.
Louis, but their kind of forever home, I guess you'd call it, is in Baldwin or Wildwood area.
Okay.
It's on top of the hill above Chesterfield.
Yeah.
But it was like a midway point. Just she cut across 109 and I cut across W, and we just met at the Taco Bell in Eureka. And we hung out all day that day and had a great time. It was like we've kind of, didn't speak for months, like four months almost, and then picked up right where we left off. And basically asked her like what she wanted to do, like how do we want to go about this, and she's like, let's give it a shot. So we did, and here we are.
Hell yeah.
And that was in 2010.
That's awesome.
So that's been a minute.
13 years ago, man.
Yeah, a long time. God damn. 13 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
it's been a while.
That's a cool, like, you don't hear a lot of great, like, origin stories anymore of, like, marriages. So that's cool to hear.
Yeah.
That you are like that. So that brings us kind of to the next jumping off point. What brought you to the Army?
I went to Missouri Baptist, did the soccer thing, went through 2-a-days of summers through the summer for like almost 2 months. And, whenever the season came, I really wasn't passionate about what I was going to school for anymore. I kind of lost interest.
Yeah.
I really wasn't feeling MoBap, Missouri Baptist. I wasn't feeling MoBap anymore. It just didn't feel right. And so the season starts, and they were starting, like all of us kids that they put on scholarship, a bunch of us that went through the 2-a-days, they weren't even playing us, and they were playing kids from like the basketball team who were on basketball scholarships that weren't any good, and we were losing games.
Yeah.
So it like I'm a really bad sore loser, and it was pissing me off basically.
Yeah.
That he would, like, the coach wouldn't even put us in, and they had a losing record every year. Like if you look back from that era, like their team was terrible.
Yeah.
But I was like, cool, I'm on a scholarship, so I'll do it. I don't care if the team's bad or not. But I got pissed, and I like walked off a field and was like, take your whole thing and shove it. Because like I just killed myself for 2 months for nothing.
Yeah.
You're not even playing us now, and we're just getting smoked. But you're playing kids who didn't even go through 2-a-days. So I kind of threw a hissy fit, and I walked off the field.
What was the coach's deal? Like what did you ever learn? Like what? Why
I don't know.
I mean that's crazy.
I don't really know.
That doesn't even sound coachish, you know? Like
it wasn't good. It felt like a real political thing. A lot of the kids that they were playing were from like kids from other countries that were recruited in for sports.
So maybe they thought they were going to do solid or something.
Yeah, well that, and they were trying to help them out because the coach was from another country too. So I don't know. I don't really know what it was, but it just didn't sit me right, and a whole bunch of us quit like right there on the spot because it was like I felt like I was there to fill a void of like making the team diverse. Is kind of how it felt.
Yeah.
And it was just like we killed ourselves for 2 months through 2-a-days when it was 100 degrees outside, and then you're not even going to utilize us when we're getting our butts kicked.
Yeah.
To change something that's not working.
Yeah. This is like 2013 or so, right? Or
this would have been late 2000. Yeah, it was 2011.
Yeah.
I finished the year at SEMO for 10, and then I went up there for 2011. So I walked off pretty fast and quit. Totally dropped out of school before I had to pay the money back, just because I was kind of done with school. Like I was over. Like I feel like I had played soccer so long at a competitive level that I was almost burned out. So like it was like it built up and spearheaded, and then like I just kind of lost it on the field at the end of the game. Like the game was over, we got destroyed like normal, and I just quit. I was done. Yeah. And like I walked off. So I got a job doing landscaping for like a year. I'm like, I'm just going to take a year off, not work or not go to school, and figure out what I want to do. And she stayed with me. We kept dating, and then I was doing landscaping and like working for a tree service. Wasn't making a lot of money, and I had done applied at quite a few places, but I had my big claim to fame was I was trying to get into like AT&T as one of their people who go through and like install stuff, like install the fibers. For like the cell services and like internet services, because in St. Louis at the time it was a pretty good job. It would have been secure enough for what I needed. And at that level, I was young that I could have climbed a tier and maybe worked up to something. Mm-hmm. My mother-in-law had worked for Southwestern Bell and retired from there, which is
Southwestern Bell
now AT&T.
Yeah, it's AT&T. Yeah.
So I was
that used to be one of that was like if it wasn't the largest, it was one of the largest in the country. Like and now it's gone. Like people don't remember that.
Yeah. Like
it looked like a Taco Bell logo kind of.
A few of them retired from there within her family. I was like, well, it's good enough. I'll do that. Well, I was impatient. It took them months to do the hiring thing, and then winter hit. landscaping slows down in the winter. We did snow removal, but we didn't get a lot of snow.
Yeah.
So we weren't. I was sitting and wasn't working, and I had always felt a calling to serve in the Army. Um, a part of me at one time felt like almost every male should do at least 3, but now I don't think so.
Yeah.
Um, but I wanted to. I had a cousin who was in. He did 8 years. He was like, "Don't join, don't join." He's like, "You're gonna hate it."
Yeah.
But I did. I was kind of like, I don't want to say I hit rock bottom in life, but I felt like it was a step that would. It was a consistent paycheck. It could test me on what I wasn't sure about. So I went and talked to the Marines first. Um, they didn't have. I mean, I was kind of like, yeah, let's go join the Marines. Because my cousin's like, don't join the Army. So I'll do the Marines. So I went and talked to them. Got their spiel. Then I went and talked to the Army guys. And then I waited like a week. And then I was like having a bad day for some reason. And I got kind of drunk. And then I went down there again. And I went to go sign up for the Marines, but they weren't there. They were like out of the office for the day.
Yeah.
It's like, screw it. So I went down and I just enlisted. Signed up for an 18 X-ray contract. No, I actually, when I went the recruiter, I was going to be a 68 whiskey, a combat medic.
Oh, okay.
That was my initial what I wanted to be, what the recruiter did. And waited a couple months, did like 3 months of their little train up, whatever they do. There was a, I don't remember the kid's name, but I called him Dodson because he was like Dodson from Major Payne. He was like super gung ho. He was leading PT every Thursday. We were doing this, and like it was like, I was in good shape because of soccer. So like the PT was simple. Main thing I had to get used to was the ruckings because I never rucked.
They had you doing all that for the prep?
every Thursday.
Wow.
It wasn't a lot, but like, we would just. Yeah, we would every Thursday we would go work out together and do like PT. So like when I went to basic, like the whole Army PT prep drills and stuff, I kind of already knew them.
Yeah. To your point, I just wanted to point out because I wanted to take a break for a second, but like I feel you on the not knowing thing, and then you always like felt like you had a sense of, like me. I went to college for 2 years. Well. I went to Missouri State for a year, didn't pan out. I got expelled and everything. And then my second year, I went to Ozark Technical Community College, where I still at that point, I was trying to work to cover my bills because I was living in a house, and I couldn't keep up. And then my third year, all I did was work. Like, I worked at Pan Express for a year, and I tried like get my grades up and stuff, and I couldn't. But I moved home for a while. I was like, let me get back and reset. Like, I got to figure myself. I was drinking a fuck ton. I was around some wild people that were either extremely successful or extremely, like, down in the dumps. And I'm like, I got to figure something out. So I moved home. I got, like, 4 different jobs that were, like, either I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings, and then I worked at Walmart Distribution, which was, like, one of the hardest jobs I've ever had because they're very demanding there. And then I worked at Quaker Windows up here, which is also very demanding. And not, I guess at an early age you learn about purpose, and you're like, I want something that means something, not just go through the motions. Because you see older people that like are there, and you're like, you hate your life. Like, I don't want to be that when I'm 40, 50 years old.
Absolutely.
So like then I'm like, all my buddies, I had 2 buddies, one in the Navy, one in the Army, that kept telling me, no, don't join. Like, it's not as fun. I'm like, the paycheck seems really solid. Like, I've never had a stable paycheck. I can actually try and get myself going there, all this stuff. And then I literally just went to a recruiter, took tests. I was going to be a linguist, but I had terrible credit at that point. I had really bad credit, so they couldn't pass me on my security clearance. So they were like, it's either infantry, watercraft operator, or Seaburn. And for some reason, I didn't pick watercraft operator, and I picked Seaburn. But like, I feel that where you're like, man, I'm kind of going nowhere at this point. I got to get that motivated. And I think that's the good part about the Army, for better or worse, now that where we're at. Like, at that initial thing, you did realize, oh, I can do something. I'm going to figure this out. So,
yeah.
I want to jump back into your contract and stuff and how that road took. We'll just take a quick break and then we'll come right back.
Sounds good.
Hey guys, another person I want to talk about before we start the show is Eric Vierhoff, who runs a really awesome business called Sun Stoppers out of Columbia, Missouri. If you're driving down the road and that sun's hitting your eyes like crazy and you're thinking, damn, I got to get some shades going on, look no further than Sun Stoppers, where they do everything from auto, home, and commercial window tinting to ceramic coating and detail. They even offer discounts for military, EMTs, firefighters, nurses, doctors, and teachers. This is awesome that they're out there supporting their community like that. For people that are giving so much, they're giving a whole lot back. Okay, they're located up there in Columbia, 1313 Grand Avenue, Suite B. They're open 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Okay, Eric, I known him for years. Great dude, easy to work with. Okay, go there for all that that tinting needs, from auto to home and commercial. All right, thank you guys so much. And we're back. All right, with me again, it's Ben and Cody. We're talking about he kind of got us up to the point where he was joining the Army. Cody, let's just talk about that. Like so you went to the recruiter. You were talking about the Marine, wasn't even there. So I'm going Army, and he signed you up.
Yeah. So did the paperwork, did the little weekly training with him, and then I think I was like 3 or 4 months. I had to wait before I actually went to MEPS, and when I shipped, went up through St. Louis MEPS. Stayed a night in a hotel. Nice
Yes,
hotel.
The
The
Everybody,
Millennial.
yeah, oh yeah.
Oh my God, that thing was.
Did you get the room, the dinner or whatever?
Oh yeah, it was like the best part of the Army.
Yes,
yes, best part of the Army.
Like, this is great.
It was great. So then the next morning, they shuttled us over to MEPS, did the whole duck walk, did all that stuff. And when I went into, I guess like the admin portion, and they were doing documents, there was this dude, and he was talking to me like it was for my clearance. And he was like, you don't seem like you're gung-ho about being a medic. And at that time, I wasn't, which I should have been, because it would have been a good gig. But I wasn't. I wanted to be an infantry guy. I don't know why, but I did. And he was like, well, what about 18 X-ray? He's like, I can't get you infantry, but I can get you that. I'm like, well, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's Green Berets. He's like, you go through, automatically walk into the OCS training, or not OCS, the selection, and try to be a Green Beret.
Yeah.
I was like, right on. I'm like, what happens if I fail? He's like, well, you'll be an infantry guy. He's like, you have to go to infantry first. I'm like, well, cool. So either way, I get kind of what I want, and if it's successful, it's a super high speed route.
Yeah.
So I jumped on that, and I went to basic, went to OSIT for infantry, and then followed on to airborne, where I got dropped, and then lost the 18 X-ray contract and became an infantryman.
Yeah, you told me about that whole trip with the airborne stuff.
Yeah, getting dropped and getting signed up like that.
I never told you that. I went to airborne school and got dropped too. Before I went my second time, I was a specialist. I re-enlisted for it, for 4 or 5 years or whatever, and I had airborne school, and then I was going to come back clear and go to Italy, and it was also right when I met Danielle.
Yeah.
And we were like, she's like, you're not going to stay with me. I go, yeah, I am. Like, she's like, Ben, you're going to Italy. Like, no, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. Just shut the fuck up. So I go and I 41 clubbed it. And at first I always thought, like, I was like, that's just something people say. But I got there, and true to form, like, I mean, back then it was like 300 people were going through, and about 50 or so, 50, 60 failed the PT test, and everybody was getting like 41. And you're like, how the fuck, like, and it was, I saw a master sergeant who failed scream at him, like, and you kind of realize at a certain point, like, oh, okay, this is just how it is, like, it's whatever. But yeah, I think the airborne school is kind of weird like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely was. They got a lot of people when I was there for the 41, and then they were dropping like flies during the rest of the time, and they basically wiped out pretty much all the 18 X-rays throughout that course. And when we all failed out, they, for whatever reason, the document we signed basically said in a way that we volunteered to withdraw or to drop.
Yeah.
And to go back, it was like a '07 approval, I think.
I think it's because on paper it looks like you decided.
It looks like we wanted to quit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that
did that break your spirits pretty bad? Like
yes and no, because I was so new in the Army. Like we kind of got treated like crap because we were fresh out of basic.
Yeah.
Or OSIT, like we were brand new, and like we were doing, like everybody else was just there for school, and we were doing like CQ. We were doing staff duty. Like everybody that I went to OSIT with, we were doing like yard work. Like we were doing all the details on top of being at the school. Everybody else would like come back from training, and then they would leave and go to Subway and go get whatever they wanted and leave. And we were like the schoolhouse detail.
Yeah,
that's kind of how it was. Which I was all the privates, like all the fresh privates. Which it's kind of like I get it, but I don't at the same time, because like you're there for a purpose. And there's enough holdovers and hold unders around places that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
But I know whenever we left, that entire platoon of black hats, which were the instructors for airborne, got relieved because of how many they dropped from that course. But I don't think it really. I kind of got what I wanted in being an infantry guy. Looking back now, I definitely wish I would have gotten through, at least to go to selection, to see if I could even do that.
Yeah.
Do I think I would have made it through? Probably not. I think going to selection, I know you've worked with the group guys, the Green Berets, and I've been attached to them overseas, and I don't think going into that environment right out of AIT is the right option.
And young kids like that,
young. Like we were all a little older because they wanted college, or you had to be a certain age or something. But we were all like, I think almost all of us was 21 that went through. But we were like, I thought I was mature at the time, but I wasn't. I mean, I was still a child.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have made it, and I don't think I would have physically, mentally been prepared for it. I'll never know, but I don't think I would have made it through anyway.
I think where you're at, after dealing with what you've dealt with through the Army, you realize your mental fortitude and stuff is, you thought it was strong back then, but like now you're like, I'm nowhere. I was a child.
Yeah.
I was so not where I needed to be.
Absolutely. Like I don't think I would have made it through. It would have been a cool experience, but that's all it really would have been.
Yeah.
I could have went back later, but I just never had the hunger to do it again, I guess. For multiple reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But so I got dropped, basically was a holdover. So then I was doing that, and got to go work the drop zone one day instead of cutting grass, and I volunteered to do that every day because it was better than cutting grass. And then finally shipped out in October. So I got dropped in beginning of September, and then I left. I finally got orders and report date, and I went to Fort Drum, New York, and reported on October 10th of 2012.
I didn't know that was your first spot. Yeah.
Yep. Fort Drum was my first place.
Yeah. On regular line company.
Regular line platoon. Yeah, I was in Bravo Company, Battle Company 132 Infantry.
Yeah. How was it up there?
I loved it.
Let me jump back real quick. Where were you and your wife at this point?
So while I was in OSIT, and I guess like we weren't married yet, we were dating. I was in basic, and I wasn't getting letters from her. I kind of thought it was over, was expecting the Dear John, finally got one. I think I was in like 7 or 8 weeks in to basic, and she told me she was pregnant. So that's how I found out I was going to be a dad.
Yeah.
And we had talked about like the kids and everything and like a future. We'd only been dating for like a year. So it was kind of like probably in the far off, or a little later, but we weren't being excessively careful about stopping it.
Right.
Well, here we are.
That's what happens,
It happened. So they came down, for graduation from AIT. So like when we graduated OSIT, did the turning blue, and then we immediately shipped to airborne. and then all that happened with airborne. So when I got to drum, we got a 4-day weekend over, I don't really know what for, but on November 5th of 2012. So I reported October 10th, went into a barracks room, didn't have anything because I went to Fort Benning. I went to Fort Benning.
It's that empty ass barracks room.
Yeah. So I went to Fort Benning in June 4th. I went to Benning for OSIT, and then next thing you know, December, I'm showing up to upstate New York. So summertime Georgia to wintertime upstate New York, 30 miles from Canada. I didn't have shit. Nightmare. So like I get there, and like I was like looking at the weather. I'd never heard of New York. They're like, you're going to Fort Drum, New York, and like I'm not a city person. I don't really care for cities, and I was like, shit. So I was like started Googling, like looking for New York and New York City, or Fort Drum in New York City. And I couldn't find it. I'm like, well, what the hell? So I Googled Fort Drum, found out it's nowhere near New York City.
Yeah. Way upstate.
And the temperature was like 22 degrees outside. And it was like October. I'm like, holy crap. So I bought a hoodie from the PX at Georgia at Fort Benning, and that's all I took. So I had like some jeans, some civilian clothes that I wore to OSIT when I first left, and then a hoodie. And I got up there, and I got to the base, and then got my little barracks room, and then met my team leader the next day. And then I didn't have much because like we were planning on getting married because she was pregnant, you know, like we had already talked like, well, we might as well go ahead and do it. So it was basically waiting on a day to do it, and we got a 4-day on. It was on November 5th. I don't really know why we had a 4-day, but I called her like, hey, we got a 4-day if you can get up here. So her dad like bought a ticket on the fly.
Yeah.
And flew her up. We on a Thursday night, Friday morning we went and did like the meet and greet with the courthouse lady because you had to wait 24 hours from the minute you filed to the minute you said I do.
Oh.
So we did that on Friday. Or we might have did that Thursday. I don't really remember. But then we did that and then tied the knot the next day.
Yeah.
And then hung out in a hotel room. She's very pregnant at this point.
Yeah.
She's like 6.5 months pregnant, 7 months pregnant. And then, so November 5th, we got married. And then we did a Buffalo Wild Wings, their chili cheese dip.
Yeah.
Got 2 of those and a massive pizza from Cam's Pizza. These things are like, you know, like GWs and TKs.
Yeah,
it's
one of those.
It's bigger than that.
Yeah, geez.
It's huge. We got one of those, and that was our honeymoon. And then she flew back home on Monday, and then I got Christmas leave, so we just did some training, whatever, with the unit. I lived in a little hotel because I had to clear out of the barracks, so I lived in a hotel waiting on an apartment on base, and finally got that. So I then moved in there. And I was sleeping in my sleep system from the Army in there because I didn't have.
Oh my God!
Didn't have a bed or anything.
Yeah.
Living pretty bare minimum. And then when we got Christmas leave, I had bought a truck, drove home, got her, loaded all of our stuff up, got a bunch of things donated from family members. Like, here, you know, things we don't need, take it.
Yeah.
And loaded up a U-Haul, and I moved her back up after the first of the year, and she was about 7.5, 8 months pregnant, and that was that.
Man.
Stopped at Hooters in Dayton, Ohio on the way up because she was tired, so we got a room, and Hooters was the only thing open, so we went there, got treated like kings because she was very pregnant, and the Hooters girls were like treating her like a saint, and then got to New York the next day, and
what a wild start.
Yeah, it was rough,
man. Yeah, I'm sure.
It was rough. I felt bad for her. She was a trooper, but yeah, we ended up being he had a cleft lip when he was born.
Oh, okay.
So he was born on February 24th, and because of that, and she had a heart issue at the time. Sinus tachycardia runs in her family, and her dad's got AFib, but she had sinus tachycardia, so she would like her heart will like skyrocket. Doing like minimal at the time would skyrocket doing like minimal activity.
Yeah.
So like climbing the stairs, like yours or eyes will be at like 80 beats per minute or something, or 90 maybe. Hers would be at like 200.
Oh wow.
So they were worried about her in labor.
Yeah.
With her heart, so
yeah.
they wanted to monitor her. Well, the hospital in Watertown, right outside Fort Drum, was so small, and it was under construction. They didn't have the setup to monitor her while she was in labor for what they wanted. So we had to drive to Syracuse,
Oh,
which is like
It's
an
a-
hour.
it's an hour
It's
too,
an
right?
hour and some change down 81, which isn't a big deal, but on your first kid, it was scary. But the big factor was it was in February, which in that area is where they get the whiteout snows through
Oh
the Tug Hill region
yeah.
that come off of Lake Erie. So I was worried about that. So luckily, they wanted it to be so controlled and knew we were traveling, they decided an inducement date. So I went down the day prior. We were going to induce her on the 23rd. And we went down, got her into the hospital. And then before they started doing the induction, they were like, hey, there's other people who are like in labor that are
Yeah.
like starting to go, and we don't have enough room. So we got to move you guys out because you're not even ready to go yet. We're like, okay. So we left. And I'm like, well, it was snowing. I'm like, I'm not driving all the way back up there.
Yeah.
So I went and got a real classy room at the Red Roof Inn
Ooh.
in Mattydale, which is just like one exit north of Syracuse. And then we got some good food, fed her, gave her some ice cream, and then waited on a phone call the next day. And we went in, and then they went in. I think we went in at like 8:00 in the morning, and they started inducing her, and we had him that day.
Oh, okay.
Everything was good. He just had luckily it was just a little cleft lip.
Yeah.
No palate issues, no nasal. We got really lucky with it, and he had surgery at like, I think he was like 6 weeks old. They did
What surgery do they do?
so. There was luckily we got really lucky with a lot of it because Syracuse has at the time his name was Sherrard Tatum, but he was arguably at the time was like the best. I think it's maxillofacial surgery, but plastic surgeon for cleft lips
cleft lips,
in
yeah.
the country.
Okay.
And he was top something in the world. And he was covered by TRICARE. So
All right.
we got to go down there and do that. I was on CQ when he had surgery, but because they would only allow one in there anyway.
Yeah.
So she took him, but they did that and just basically like they basically cut it and then like pulled it together and sewed his lip back. And if you look at him, you can kind of see a scar.
Oh, okay.
But just did that, and then the worst part about it was he had to have his arm splinted, so he wouldn't touch his face for a while. And as a 6-week-old, that's
rough.
rough. So he was doing that, and we had to find special. He couldn't latch, like breastfeeding was hard.
Yeah.
We had to have special ways to feed him, and it was a chore. And then 2 months after that, his arms were still splinted because he had to stay splinted for 3 months, I think, so he wouldn't interfere with any stitches and healing. And then so he was born in February, and then I deployed in April.
I was wondering. I was going to ask you. I was like, now, how quick did the deployment come?
End of March and April. I deployed.
So did you know pretty much, or was it a spring on?
No, I knew.
Okay.
We knew. We weren't sure about numbers if I was going to get the go because I was kind of like, as a new private, I was kind of on the chopping block, and then as with him, I was kind of on the chopping block.
This is like 2012, 2013,
This was
right?
2013.
Yeah, so it's still going a bit.
Yeah.
Like the war, yeah.
So I ended up going. I was in 3rd Platoon in Battle Company 132, 3rd Tune, bunch of degenerates. I loved that platoon. But we left. It was like the end of March, early April, and we went to. We were in Wardak on a little bitty cop in Afghanistan. It was called Sultan Keel. It was along the MSR-1 through. It connected Ghazni to. What is it? Kabul, I guess. It ran north.
It ran north-south. Yeah,
It ran north and south through the Wardak area, and we were.
It's on like the southeast side or something, or more east side.
Yeah, it's kind of northeast. It's like the base of the southern tip of the mountains in northern Afghanistan.
Okay.
And we were on basically this big ridge. The cop was on one ridge, and then there was like this huge gorge. We called it just this massive wadi, and then there was a cliff, and then you could go around the backside of it. And we had a little OP that you'd go up there for like 2 weeks at a time or a week at a time.
Yeah.
And do like your OP shifts up there with like your squad and like like you'd either platoon, sergeant, or PL would go, and then like one or two squads would go up, while the rest of the company was down on the cop.
Yeah.
It was basically a lot of route clearances because at that time we were retrograding whatever base was up north. I don't remember what it was. They were retrograding that one and moving stuff south to Ghazni. So we had the big, we had to keep that whole area clear of IEDs. So we did a lot of route clearances with some National Guard engineer units that had all the IED to feed
all the
trucks,
all the toys and shit.
all the toys.
So are you dismounted at this point, or are you mounted light?
We were mounted light. So we had the Mat V's and we had Max Bros. We had we had 4 trucks per company. Basically, each squad had a truck. So we would do just your route clearance patrol. You'd put the trucks out there on the line, and then you'd have like a couple of the engineer trucks to be in the front. They're the ones looking for stuff.
They got the rollers and shit. Yep. They're checking for it all.
Line rollers, and then they had the thing that I don't remember what they're called, but they would go out and hook stuff if they found wires.
Yeah.
But we did I called it the reverse flying V. So we would kick out dismounts. We would dismount and walk. We had like inner teams and outer teams. So the inner teams would walk like 5 to 15 yards off of the road.
Yeah.
Looking for
shit, right?
command wires and like stuff like that going under the road. And then the outer teams were farther in front of them and like 50 to 100 yards off the road.
Yeah.
And we were looking for like long running stuff or like looking basically for like trigger men.
Yeah.
Is what we would do. And I got moved to, I deployed as a saw gunner. So I was like a squad machine, the squad assault weapon, automatic weapon. I had a 249. And then when I got over there, they're like, you're going to be the RTO. I was like, awesome.
Geez. Good thing I trained for this.
Yeah, I trained up for that, and then got over there and knew nothing about radios, and all of a sudden I had an SKL, and I was.
Of course, they gave. Yeah. It's always funny because it's like the SKL. They're like, you always hear like, yeah, your comm guy is gonna fill it all, and the comm guy's like, nah, figure it out. Here's the SKL, figure it out, dude.
Yeah. So we had, exactly, and I had no clue what they were talking about. So like me and the FO, like he became my best friend. We're like, well, let's go figure this out.
Yeah.
So we went up there, and our the 25 uniform that was attached to our company, his name was Moda, Bhavin Moda. He was a freaking commo guru, and we're like, I'm like, Moda, I know nothing, teach me. And he was like, it's really simple. And he was like going through the shit. I'm like, I have no clue what you just did.
Yeah.
But we learned, figured it out, and got through it. So I was always got to go on all the patrols. Got to be typically the LT always wanted to be on the outer one looking for the trigger guy. So I was always with him. He's felt like he had the most command and control there.
On the outer
sector, because like the platoon sergeant would be in with the trucks.
Oh, okay.
And then we would be dismounted. So I was always got to do a lot of walking.
Right.
It was cool. It was a rush.
How long was that deployment?
9 months.
It ran somewhat smooth, or?
Yeah, it was pretty smooth. At that time, the war was kind of dying down.
Yeah.
Like there was some stuff, but a lot of it was like, it felt like, all of mine felt like it was super, you're trying to win hearts and minds, and you're trying not to get into fights unless the fight comes to you first.
Yeah.
We weren't really out initiating. We did a couple things. We did some stuff there was an ODA, well, the SF group. There was some group guys that were operating there, and then when they would come in, so right outside of Sultan Keel, there was a little town. There was just Sultan Keel, which is why the cop was Sultan Keel. But right up the highway a little bit, there was a town. I believe it was called Salar or Sinjar, but it was a bunch of bad dudes that lived there.
Yeah.
A lot of cachet and a lot of HME was made there. So the ODA guys would go raid that, and when they did, they would contact us and let us know they were coming, and they typically requested a platoon or two to kind of like one for QRF and one to kind of help cordon the city.
Yeah.
To like look for squirters and like kind of give them like a bird's eye view of stuff so they could maneuver if needed.
They're just wanting more coverage.
Yeah, just to help them out, because I mean, you know how they are. They run pretty minimal.
Right.
And they can't.
Yeah, they probably had one team, maybe 2 teams, like running through the city.
We would go help them, and like that was the main stuff that would go off. And then like other than that, it was always kind of like you were wondering if we would do a lot with ANA, the Afghan army, and then their police force. So like you'd be patrolling and then they start shooting at you. So you're like, you can't shoot back
Yeah.
because they're them. So then you're just trying to like get them to see who they're shooting at.
How do you? I have my own opinions, but how do you feel about them, like the ANA and
Their commandos were awesome.
Yeah.
I loved working with their commandos, and depending on which group you got, which unit of them you were working with, and who their leaders were, who was like in charge of them.
Yeah.
Some were pretty good, and some were there just for a paycheck and a status.
Yeah.
Met some really good ones. Met some not so good ones. Like there's some that I would trust. I would say with my life, probably not. But like they were over there at the time, they were trustworthy enough. And then there were some that was just like, there's no way I would turn my back on you.
Yeah. You always hear these stories about them running away or not doing their job and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I personally, I didn't, I never had the type of shit you went through. I never had to do combat patrols or any of that type of shit, but I had to deal with the ones working in garrison with us. Yeah. And even at that time, some of them you're just like, dude, you are sketchy as fuck and you don't seem like honorable at all. So like I hate that because I'm not trying to stereotype or generalize. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like they had no integrity for their country. Yeah. That's all. Like,
they were there. It was all about money. Like whatever fed their families is what mattered.
Well, then then if you dig deeper into the history of it, you're like, well, these guys, really the Taliban or what's the other one? It's Taliban and
ISIS.
No, before ISIS, because
Al-Qaeda.
So Al-Qaeda is really the bad one because they work off of religion, right? Yep. They're not. Taliban is what Bin Laden worked for.
Yep.
It was a terrorist group through and through. Al-Qaeda was a religious group that thought they were right in commanding the country. Mm-hmm. So like, they're like, you're going to follow these laws because it's by God, or we're going to kill your family, mm-hmm. or you can like live with us and we'll give you bread and stuff. Like, I mean, obviously, like America, if it went the same way, like if it was like Christian groups that took over and were like, hey, if you just believe in God, like, and we'll feed your family, a lot of people are probably going to go with it. Like it may not sit well, but they're feeding your family and they're going to kill you otherwise. So it's like, that's really hard to like fight,
Yeah.
That's why we're going down such a, I don't mean to dive down that rabbit hole.
Good.
It's just like, it's so hard to fight a war on a belief system. Like people that are believing in such a divine right to them, it's so hard to change the minds of. Yeah. And it's so hard to like change the structure of the people who like all the Americans coming over, they're not working off a belief system. They're working off of what's called democracy, mm-hmm. and they think that's the almighty power. Yeah. And it's very hard to push.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of their little, like their units were like we had the PL I had, he was like, it's like working with like a 3-headed snake. He goes, you'll have like what you think is the main leader. He goes, and then next thing you know, they like mutiny against the guy, or they just straight up fucking kill him.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow they're duking it out about who's leading it. And then they pick somebody, and then they have totally different ideas on how they want to operate. It's like every day was a learning. There was always a learning curve.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out like which way they were going to go, who was in charge, what they even stood for. So at times it felt like they didn't stand for anything.
Yeah.
Because like those guys would like, we had an interpreter, like his cousin killed his dad over a family farm, and he put in leave, went home, killed his cousin, got the farm back, and then came back to keep working. Jesus it's like you'll kill your own freaking family over a farm or a piece of Afghan dirt. Like, good Lord, dude. So it was just like, what do you think they would do to us if like given the time? And it was like we had to work with them and had to trust them, which was fine. Like I met some of them are really cool dudes.
Yeah.
Like some of our interpreters were like awesome, like
yes.
amazing men. But you would, on any given day, like one day they're your best friend, and if you say something or do something that disrespects them, and you could do it like unconsciously, not even knowing that it's disrespectful to them, next thing you know, you're like enemy number one.
Yeah. And
like they're out to get you. So it's like you were always on end, and like we worked with them daily, in some way, shape, or form. So it was an interesting thing.
That was your first deployment, though.
That was my first one.
Yeah. And Did you have a lot of downtime or not really?
You were always on. You were either always in a tower. As the RTO, I got the privilege of being in the talk, so I was always in a heated tent. So I got kind of
Yeah,
lucky.
that's kind of nice. Yeah.
I dodged some. I dodged some. I got pretty lucky on that deployment compared to my all my friends that I was with. But yeah, we would. I wouldn't say it was downtime. Like you were always on QRF or you were on mission platoon, so you'd be the one running the missions that week, the route clearance patrols or whatever, or you were force pro, so you'd be in the towers or at the OP,
Yeah.
and then the next week you'd be mission, so you're the one running the missions and going out and doing whatever. If the SF guys needed support, you'd support them. If they were doing a route clearance patrol, you would do that. If we had to go do a KLE or go somewhere, you would do that.
Yeah.
And then there was always a QRF, so there was always somebody ready to rock and roll in 10 minutes. So you were always on standby. So like downtime was, we kind of considered downtime what is like the force pro. So like if you were in the towers or in the fighting positions or at the OP, it was like shift work. So that was your downtime. Yeah. So you would go do like an 8 to 12 hour shift in a tower, and then you were off for the rest of the day.
Right.
You go to the gym, you do whatever.
Do whatever you need to.
You weren't on standby. You were just waiting for your shift. It's kind of that was the downtime, I guess you would say. So
Did it go by smooth on 9 months or?
yeah, it was pretty smooth. We had a really good command team. The platoon sergeants and like the squad leaders were awesome. They were really experienced.
How about with your wife being home?
That was rocky. I was young and I wasn't a real good husband. Yeah. And I was talking to other girls while I was over there. Uh-huh. So, I wasn't a really good someone to be proud of. Like I look back at him now and like, if I could go back, I'd kill that guy, but I can't. So all I can do is better going forward. But it was not good. She did great in the atmosphere that I provided for her. She's always been kind of an independent person. She took what she had to deal with. Like she was in New York, single mom by herself, pretty much.
Yeah.
With a
from
kid,
Missouri, who
from
never
Missouri,
been up there. Yeah.
In a New York winter, late winter, and then summer. She survived. You know, I can't say it was good. It wasn't smooth, but we got through it. Mm-hmm. It was rocky when I came back, obviously, as it should have been. But we got through it.
Yeah, you came out of it, obviously.
Came out of it.
So let's talk. You come back. You get done with your 9 months. You come back to drum.
The way drum, man, I don't know if it's still like this, but when I was there, it was like every month it felt like you were doing something in the field. You were training. You were either in the field training, you were on red cycle, so you were doing like your recovery from just coming out of the field, or you were prepping to go back to the field the next week, and it was like a constant cycle.
Yeah.
And then we threw in like JRTCs in the mix, all that stuff, and all that time we're trying to salvage what we could of our marriage, I guess you would say.
Right.
Working through all that, working the kinks out.
I think what you're talking about, though, like to not, I think that's common for a lot of guys, man. Like
it's sadly like it's funny because all the movies portray like the soldier gets the Dear John letter, but in my time in the Army, I have seen more service members be the one that weren't doing the right thing.
Yes.
It's funny that the Army wives always or Army spouses, I guess, get shafted and get that view. People view them as like, oh, she left the service member.
Yeah, it's like,
and
no.
From my experience, most of the dudes in the Army are the ones that are out fucking around.
Yeah, or they're pushing their wife away so much, man.
Yeah, and it's like, they push. A lot of them push them away, and they don't. A lot of it do it intentionally just because they don't want to deal with what's at home, or they don't want to. They don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
But luckily, she wasn't one to quit, and I wasn't one to quit either. we neither one wanted it to fail. So we kind of just grinded through it, but it was a battle, dude.
Yeah.
From that whole next, even when I deployed my second one, like we weren't great.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of us, I can't speak for her, but if I could, I don't think either one of us thought that we would make it through that one.
How far of a gap was there?
I was.
Were you still with 10 Mountain?
I was with Drum for 4 years.
Okay.
I deployed twice with them. So I got there in 12, deployed in 13, came back in 14, and then I was there for the rest of 14, and then deployed again. I don't really remember the dates well, the months.
Yeah.
But my unit deployed to Iraq, and my platoon, we had a new PL and a fairly new platoon sergeant.
Yeah.
So they left, numbers got cut. So they actually cut my platoon from it, but they deployed me and a couple, like a fire team, forward with them. And we went to Kuwait, and we were going to Iraq. So we went to Besmaya? Not Bismaya. What's the little base? Buring. We went to Buring.
Oh, yeah.
I was on Buring. And I was an LNO for a while, and we were basically ensuring troop movement,
and stuff,
getting troops in and out, and then
LNO spots sucks though. It's boring, right?
It's super boring. It was shift work. I mean, it was easy.
It's easy, but it's like you got to get a good rhythm, or you're just going to be in misery the whole fucking time.
It was just a lot of movement, a lot of movement. Like the hours were, like you wouldn't do anything for like a day or two. You're just kind of like prepping pallets to get lifted to get onto birds.
Yeah.
Or like trying to do manifests depending on numbers that were coming in. The big one was finding tents, like making sure they had somewhere to go when they did get there.
Oh, really?
Because like there's so many tents there, but like there was no like these are your tents. It was like you got to figure like just go.
Yeah, no proper handovers. Just figure it out.
Go somewhere in here and find beds. And I'm like, I need 200 beds, and there's you have 200 people spread throughout 15 tents.
Yeah.
And it was like because units weren't consolidated and stuff, and it was
nightmare.
Really, it kind of pissed you off a little bit.
Yeah,
but
because you think it would be more organized than that.
It should be. Yeah. I mean, it's logical to make it easy. But
give me 1 second. We're gonna take a quick break. I want to jump back into that though, right when we get back.
All right.
All right, we're back, guys. We're gonna jump right back into it. Cody, your second deployment, kind of going into that. You were LNO, you said, for a little bit. What kind of went into that afterwards? As it was.
I wasn't over there the full time, so I only did like half the deployment, and I got to come home early, which is probably good. With everything that was going on back home, we made it through that one, and then I mean it was an easy, no threat deployment. Didn't have to carry a weapon or anything. It was pretty. Basically, just troop movement. It was all admin based. The guys that were in Iraq, all they were doing, they were training the Iraqi military.
Yeah.
In Besmai, it was about 40 kilometers east of Baghdad.
Yeah.
In the desert. So all they were doing was like going through the motions, trying to teach the Iraqi army to fight ISIS. That was kind of the developing thing at that time. I
think it's so crazy how you look at the Afghanistan versus Iraq war. Like Afghanistan, it seems it was. I don't know if it's not necessarily milder, but it stayed at this constant level for a long time. Whereas Iraq, it seemed like a spike, like from 03 basically to like maybe 10 or 11.
Yeah.
It went like crazy, Battle Fallujah, all that stuff, Sadr City, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy insanity. And then it just mellowed out a bit.
Yeah.
Whereas Afghanistan, it was like little conflicts over and over and over. You got what's the big Restrepo stuff where it was down in Korengal Valley. I mean, that was a nightmare, but it was a nightmare for a long ass fucking time.
Yeah.
And then you got out west. I think there was some bullshit going on.
Yeah.
I can't remember the spots there.
Helmand was pretty
Helmand
hot.
province.
Helmand was hot.
Yeah.
A lot of it. Like it's in.
Yeah, but like that's just so crazy because Iraq, it just mellowed out a bit,
Yeah.
I don't know. We're having technical difficulties. So you dealt with that though. You're dealing with like the training and stuff. That was pretty much it, or
Yeah, that's all they were really doing was just training them, trying to teach them to do, you know, fitness, trying to improve them as a fighting force in their own, so
okay,
they could basically coordinate along with them and fight the war that they needed to fight.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of Afghanistan, it seemed like it was all province based. So like it would rotate from province to province. It's like they were moving throughout the country at different times.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like certain parts would be hot while others were just dead.
yeah.
And then,
Even when I went, it was later, and there were like areas where you
Yeah.
knew were just fucked,
and then a lot of
nothing.
it was real seasonal too. So like they would have like,
Yeah,
it was like fair weather fighting. Like
Mm-hmm.
they would come home for the winter, and then springtime would hit and they'd come back
mm-hmm.
from wherever they were coming from, and then they would fight for a
Afghanistan
while.
does suck in the wintertime, though.
Yeah, it's
not,
brutal.
It's,
It was
it's
so
not
cold.
fun. Yeah,
Like, I mean, I was a drum for 4 years, and some of the coldest experiences I ever had in my life were up at that OP
yeah,
at Sultan Kill.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
just miserable. You're doing everything you could just to stay warm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's wild how the fighting throughout in the two different places, even though they're not that far away, but they still are.
yeah,
How different they were, and the Iraq, especially my fourth one was in Iraq, my fourth deployment,
yeah,
and it was like super political compared to anything I did in Afghanistan.
yeah.
It was like a real political war. It was weird.
How you're in your second deployment. Where would you say your morale's at for staying in the Army versus getting out, or like how did you feel about it at that point?
So my initial contract, because I was 18 X-ray, was 6 years. It was long, so I was already, there was no issue. Like at that point in time, I was kind of like a one contract person,
Yeah,
especially with everything with life that I fucked up, I guess you'd say. I was like, I'm done. I just want to be at home, because like that whole deployment, I wanted to be home, because like we were trying to work through stuff, and we were doing like significantly better on that one, just because I was able to talk to her regularly, because I wasn't in a place where we got blackouts because we had a KIA or
Right,
something.
yeah.
We didn't have blackouts while I was in Kuwait. So I was able to contact her regularly. I could go to the USO and like shoot her an email or text her or something. So it was better. It could have been better, but it wasn't terrible. But I didn't want to stay in the Army
yeah,
at all. Every time I've ever came up to a reenlistment, I hated it and I wanted to get out.
right.
But I mean, we'll get into that, but I never really had a reason to. So,
No, I get it.
but at that time,
I
I
get it.
definitely was I just wanted to come home and be with her and be with my son and kind of work through it.
Do you get to that, like, what did you find, like, in moments of times like that, like over there? Was there anything funny going on, or anything like you found joy in, or what was like your solace, I guess,
Well, that
like,
was 2015.
yeah,
Not really.
Yeah.
I'd go to the USO. I mean, the people if anybody in the military has gone to Afghanistan
it's the
or
best.
even then Iraq,
USO.
everybody went through buring most likely at some point in time. The gym was good. I did a lot of workouts. I was working out every day.
Gym was solid there.
The gym was
Pure.
really good.
I was
The
more an Arab
USO,
John, but it was
like,
still, they're both very good.
Yeah,
USO's great.
the USO was good, and they would do like I would just go in there and watch like whatever sports were on. And there wasn't much joy in it. It was just kind of like, just do your job and go home.
Yeah.
Was all I was kind of there for. My mind was pretty busy with everything that was going on within life, so I was kind of, and too, like, it was weird. It was weird being kind of left out. I kind of feel like my platoon was left out of that deployment because they took certain ones home with them.
Yeah.
It was like we wanted to be, because we trained up with them for the deployment, and then the platoon got left behind for Rear D. Well, even though I was in Kuwait, I was still supporting them more so than the rest of the platoon, but we still wanted to be there. So it was like I was kind of torn between wanting to be in Iraq with them and then also wanting to be at home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
that's just the way when you're buddies, when you train up with people, and your friends or whoever you're working with, like your team, is outside the wire, even if they're on just a patrol, like you want to be there with them because like you don't want something to happen and you not be there.
Yeah.
To help your team, to help your friends, you know.
I think it's the hardest part of the Army is that people say it's a job or whatever, but it's like, well, you spend not like more time with your platoon.
Oh yeah.
Really, your platoon more than your family.
Oh yeah.
Like you are attached to them in a very significant way, whether for good or bad. And like to say I don't want to be with them is just wrong. Like if you don't have an attachment to your platoon, you're probably you're either not trying or you really just hate them at that point. Like you're just sick of them. But you know, majority of it, you're gonna want to be with your boys.
Oh yeah.
And your girl, whatever
100%.
it is, you know.
100%.
So you get through this. It's 6 months. You said, right? You only had to do 6 months, or
I was only there for like 4, like half the deployment, 4.5.
Okay, so you get done with that. You're at pretty much your 4th year at that point, right?
Yep.
When you get back.
So I come back and I populated on assignment for Fort Bliss. So in 2015, right before I left for that second deployment, we had our second son. So Tyson was born in June, and then I deployed, I think, in August. Yeah. So he was 2 months old. So I left in August, and she had the 2 kids. And then I'm gone for a few months. So she was a saint through that deployment too. Yeah, she's a single mom of 2 now. She went home more, but she didn't stay home. She would go home a little bit and then come back to drum because I was home. You know, she was comfortable at our apartment. So I got back to drum, and it was AKO at the time. You could see your assignments, and I had a thing that said Fort Bliss, and I was like, "What's that?" So I just clicked on it. Well, by clicking on it, you acknowledge that you want the assignment.
Oh,
I didn't know that. I was just a dumb. I guess I was a sergeant by that time, but I was just a dumb sergeant. Clicked on that. And then I got a thing saying, hey, you know, you populated on orders for Fort Bliss, but you have to extend for, I think it was like 6 months.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the time and service to go fulfill the duty requirements. So I'm like, well, screw it. So I looked at her. I'm like, do you want to go to Texas? And she's like, yeah, sure. Let's try it. So we did, extended, and then moved from upstate New York, 36 hours away, to El Paso, Texas.
Yeah, the polar opposite.
Yeah. I got down there. Almost all my PCSs all occurred in October. So I got back, I guess right before Christmas of 15, and then I was back for 16. Reported to Bliss in October of 16. Immediately within like 2 weeks, I was loaded up on a bus to go to NTC at Fort Irwin.
Yeah.
And then did that, came back, went on Christmas leave. And 2017, January 3rd, got on a flight to go to Kabul on HKIA, the airfield where all the...
Who was that? Was that first AD?
It was the first armored. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I was in 136 infantry down there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So got down there, immediately moved in, and left, went to NTC for a month, came back, did Christmas leave, and then deployed again. 2017. It was January 3rd, I think, is when my flight was. I flew out, and we were in Kabul on HKIA.
Okay.
The Hamid Karzai International Airport.
Yeah, HKIA.
Up there. Yeah, we were there. And all we were doing.
That's not bad. That's not really a bad spot.
It's a NATO base. So it was the northern portion of the airport was like half of it was NATO. If you look at a map, you can actually see like this giant, I just call it a shit trench, but there's like this giant water trench.
Yeah, that goes through the whole thing, right?
That like cut it in half from east and west. And the east side was all NATO. And the west side was the Afghan Air Force. And then right in the middle of it is a little bitty compound about the size of a football field.
Yeah.
And it was an Air Force compound. And our Air Force was training their Air Force on flying. And they were actually going out in these little bitty, like, piece of shit planes. And they were bombing ISIS.
Wow.
They took us there. And we were like, it was all Guardian Angel, like PSD stuff. So we were basically like, go ahead and assigned. He was like the equivalent of our colonel. I don't remember what his rank was, but he was like a colonel for them that I was assigned to.
Yeah.
So like anywhere he went, I went. And so if he was out with like training in Afghan, I was with them. So I was flying with them, and he was. We were on the flight line with them, and then since it was my third deployment, I was still just a sergeant, but I was pulled in to the B dock. So the night shift, I would work the B dock, so I could talk to the towers that we had, and then we had a gate that controlled flow of traffic from the Afghan base over to the NATO side. They were checking IDs to make sure who was coming and going.
Yeah.
So we had teams out patrolling in trucks, and they were patrolling the flight line to secure it, and then doing the little compound base defense. I would work that at night, and then during the day, that colonel would knock on my shoe and be like, "Hey, I gotta go." And I'm like, "All right, cool."
Oh, wow.
We'd
So
hop
you,
in. It was
go.
me. It would be me, and I had a driver that would drive us.
Yeah.
And I typically took one extra guy.
You're a sergeant at this point, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went over as a team leader, and I came back as a squad leader. So we had a squad leader, had to go back early for something, and I took over for him.
Yeah.
But so I would basically pull somebody from my team just so we all were going. So just in case, it was really no issues, but just to have the numbers if it was needed. And we'd hop in a little Toyota Land Cruiser and just take off and go wherever the colonel needed to go.
Jesus.
He'd go meet with somebody, set up for the next day. And then he'd be like, "Hey, you got BDOC tonight?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "All right, cool. Well, we're leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning. So see if you can get a little bit of shut eye or something." Yeah. Which there was some Air Force security forces there. So they had someone in the talk. So I would just sit there, and if I had to get up early, I would just rack out for a couple hours. And there were so many people in that BDOC. There was some guys from Triple Canopy were in there. And then when they lost the contract, it was the Aegis took over, I think.
Yeah.
But they were it was all contractors, and then some security forces guys from the Air Force, and then us. It was just this little bitty base of I think there was only maybe 80 people on the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was small, but it was just a bunch of Guardian Angel and Uber Eats and Uber escorts is all it really was.
Jesus.
But yeah, that NATO side. That's
kind of cool though. It's a cool deployment.
It was fun. Yeah, I got a TAC Air patch from the Air Force.
Oh yeah.
So I got one of their deployment patches. It was fun.
We were over there. They have the wildest patches too.
They do. Yeah, they're cool. We were over there when the Moab got dropped.
Oh,
so it shook.
Remember watch that video? You're like, what the fuck?
It shook the dude. It shook the compound. We were sleeping because we were night shift, so it was hit during the day. And we were racked out, and it shook it, and all the Joes were like, "What the fuck was that?" I'm like, "I have no idea."
Yeah.
Somebody hit the base.
Yeah, dude.
I was on the radio. I'm like, "Did somebody just hit one of the ECPs?" And they're just like, "No, we don't know what that was." And then it came out a little later what it was. And we're like, "Good Lord."
Yeah.
It shook
I
the
forgot
country.
about that. Yeah, I remember.
It shook the country.
I watched that video
Jesus.
10 times. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. That thing, it shook us, and it was I don't remember how far they said away. It was over 150 miles away, and it shook the building.
It was 500 kilot. I don't know. It was this insane amount that just boom right on them.
It was big.
Yeah.
It was big.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. It was pretty neat. It was a fun deployment. It was weird watching when we pulled out of Afghanistan, all the stuff going on at HKIA.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Because at the terminal where all the weapons were at in the terminal, we were there. It was man, it was weird.
Yeah. I was telling someone because Bagram got overran pretty early on.
Yep.
And I think I told Danielle or something. I was like, somebody's probably, there's a fucking Al Qaeda member or somebody that's in my office right now, ripping shit apart. It's all and then I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel like a lot of people, everything you worked for, whether it was big or small, I didn't have these crazy roles, but still went. And you did all this stuff. Everything you worked for, it's gone.
Every place that I went to in Afghanistan or Iraq is in the hands of who we were keeping it from right now. 23
years basically of work for nothing.
Yeah, that first COP that we were on in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
we left that, gave it over. We actually retrograded that. So they moved down a base from northern Afghanistan to Ghazni.
Okay,
and then we shut our base down and moved everything.
On that note, we're gonna take a little break. We're gonna go.
Sounds good.
We're gonna go watch our kids, and we'll be back to tell stories.
#dad mode.
Yeah. Guys, to end off this podcast, I just wanted to point out two of the coolest people. While they're not sponsors, they are people that what they're doing is near and dear to my heart, okay? First off, I want to talk about the bus stop, which was ran by Eric's wife, Kendall, okay? It's called the bus stop, and they sell coffee and gathered goods, okay? Which means she's culminating a whole lot of things, such as I've seen stickers to mugs to wicker baskets to T-shirts to a whole lot of stuff that's really like not only kitschy, but it's cool and it's good gifts. It's those kind of things, you know, as a family you go looking for on the weekends, and you're like, that's a cool little spot. Not to mention they made it entirely out of a bus. Go check it out. You're going to love it, okay? Their hours are from on Thursday through Sunday, it's 7 to 3, and then on Monday, it's 5:30 to noon. All right, let's just talk about some of their drinks they got going. They got the white pumpkin. They got the bonfire. It's my favorite. The bonfire was amazing with what I had. They got the deer hunter, which is for these badasses around here. They got caramel apple, the nutty squirrel, the whipped vanilla chai, and a sweet leaf, as well as just regular drip coffee, which they are excellent at, and other espressos and frappes, which everybody's going to love. A whole lot of options. Get out there, get you some good coffee, try it out, okay? The next one I want to talk about is Fifth Element Tattoo. Okay, this is what, while we didn't dive into it this episode with Eric, this is his baby that he's been running actually for a couple years now. So the experience they have there, by not only by him, but one of the people he taught, Jenna, and then their new person, Jennifer, okay? All their pieces, if you look on the Facebook, they are amazing. Okay, I can't wait to go get one myself there, hopefully. It is by appointment only, okay? So if you go on their Facebook, you can literally see the link. It books right with them. It works right off a schedule. Reach out to them. Get you something going. It's not that bad, all right? But these people are actually injecting a new economy into Marys County, which I think is outstanding, okay? Thank you guys for your support, and take care. Hey, guys. Wanted to reach out to another friend here before we get done with this podcast. Just my buddy Johnny Siebert, okay? Real nice guy. He actually just started his own little business called Johnny Rotten's Egg Wax. Okay, if you go skating, you're going to need a little bit of wax for your board to get those moves right and everything. Sometimes with wax, we lose it along the way. With Johnny's patented egg style wax, he's actually onto something to where you can actually just take that with you instead of losing an entire box of wax. So reach out to Johnny. What he's doing is starting to grow, and it's a great product, okay, for all you skaters out there, especially after listening to this podcast. It's definitely going to be something you're going to want in your arsenal. So that's Johnny Rotten Egg Wax, which is actually his Instagram handle. Or you can look up Johnny Rotten Egg Wax company site, and it'll take you right to how you can order. Reach out to him. Thanks, guys. Welcome back for like the 8th time. We're good to go. We're back out here with Cody. Me and him took a change of scenery out here to a bonfire outside. Hopefully we keep it going. We were talking about your experience with the deployment, your third deployment. You were in Afghanistan again, or you were in Iraq?
The third one was HKIA.
Yeah, HKIA, yeah.
HKIA and Kabul.
And we were talking about Moab got dropped, and
yeah.
So expand on that. What else went down, or what did you feel?
Nothing really. It was just a lot of guardian angel and hanging out with the Air Force guys and watching them train the Afghan pilots. Just real simple. Just flew out to the desert a couple times and watched them basically just training. That's all they did.
Yeah.
It was pretty low impact. Got to work with meet a lot of the NATO forces and like Australians and some Polish and a lot of Turkish people.
That's fun, dude. Working with those allies and stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, there was a lot of Turkish ones there, and the Turkish defects were awesome. And there was an Italian one there as well that was pretty good.
Oh, hell yeah. Where was that at? It was in HKIA, right?
Yeah, it was HKIA.
Yeah. They had down in when I visited Kandahar, they had a couple of different ones like that, and they were always super fun to visit, you know?
Yeah. it's a neat experience. A
Yeah.
lot of different culture and military cultures. They're different, so
Yeah,
you get to
yeah.
meet a lot of their stuff and shoot their weapons and see their vehicles and stuff and just meet their people.
This is like your fifth, 6th year in the or 6th year basically, right? In
That
the
would have
Army,
been in
or
2017.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was about
Yeah.
5 into 6.
So you come off of that. That was a 9-month again, or
Yeah, that one was
Okay.
9, and then came off of that.
Easier on the marriage, or
Yeah,
Okay.
significantly easier. We were in a pretty good place then. Still going strong. That one, no children additions during that one.
good.
So that was, they came
Yeah.
after all Fort Campbell. So
Yeah.
so came back from there, and then I re-enlisted there while we were in Afghanistan.
Overseas. Yeah.
I re-enlisted there for I think 4 more years. I don't even remember. I think it was
Yeah.
4 more years. Re-enlisted to go to Alaska. We were going to go to Fort Wainwright, and then got back. Basically, did nothing but get ready to PCS. Helped. I was went and did a couple OC things for the battalion as I was kind of moving out to help facilitate. I was in 1st Brigade, so we were helping 2nd Brigade prepare for their deployment.
Yeah.
And Fort Bliss is so big they can train whatever they want without really going to NTC.
Oh,
So
wow.
we were doing they were doing brigade movements and stuff there.
Damn.
And I was just kind of operating as a fire marshal for them.
Did they just use like White Sands and stuff, or is Bliss just that?
Parts of the border of White Sands, not all the way out there, but Bliss is the base itself is big, but when you talk about the training area, it is massive.
Yeah.
It's huge. So
Which is crazy because it looks like it's in downtown El Paso.
Yeah,
You know?
it's the northern part, and then all that desert north of El Paso.
Mm-hmm.
It even up into a lot of it goes over to New Mexico.
Yeah.
So you're up there. But I was just a fire marshal, and our company commander was out there, and I was just kind of rolling around with him, supporting the squad leaders, doing giving them OC input back, and then if they called for fire, I would go out there with a Humvee or a side-by-side and drop a smoke or something to signal, their stuff landed at this grid or whatever.
Oh, cool.
Just to kind of give them feedback. And that was about it. And then PCS from there, that was a nightmare. So we were supposed to go to Alaska, and then right before household goods came, we had cleared out of our house, moved everything into storage, and household goods was going to get our stuff from a storage unit.
Yeah.
Because of the way the timeline worked out, it was just the way we had to do it. And they changed our orders last minute. We were going to go to Riley because of Wyatt's cleft lip and his EFMP stuff.
Oh,
he wasn't
okay.
going to be able to go to Alaska, and we found out 2 weeks prior. So they changed it to Fort Riley in Kansas. And then, so we were doing what we could to find a house there, bumbling, and then literally right before we were supposed to leave again, they changed it, and they're you're going to Campbell.
Jesus.
We're what the fuck? So we called household goods again, and they're yeah, we can't facilitate that now because it's a totally different direction. So it ended up being a full ditty on ourselves last minute. So in that amount of time, they extended the PCS date a month to the right.
Oh, okay.
So we went and crashed at a buddy's house. Luckily, they had the space for us, but stayed with him and his wife, and then loaded everything up in a U-Haul on our own, and moved to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Tennessee, whichever one. But,
Yeah.
That was a trip. Reported there, and first thing that my first sergeant said when I met him was, "Are you ready to go to Iraq?" And I'm well. And I was well, I just kind of got back a couple months, barely, I was still within my fenced-in time. So
yeah, you're.
I had another 3 months to go.
Yeah.
And it was the same timeline. Got there in October, deploying again in January, so I had the time. And I was well, I just got back. I don't want to be that guy, but if you don't need a staff sergeant, I will stay here.
Yeah.
If you're going to take me just because you think I want to go, I'll stay here. And I'm but if you need staff sergeants, I'll go. And he's I need staff sergeants. I go, well, then what are we talking about? So did some train up for that. They had already done JRTC, so I dodged that bullet. Just did some field stuff there at Campbell.
Kind of just got familiar with the group and
got
stuff.
familiar with the group. I was in the first platoon in 1327 Bulldog,
Yeah.
and they were the War Pigs, so we were the War Pigs. Had a good platoon sergeant.
You told me that's like one of your favorite units, right? Like those, they were good dudes.
I loved the unit and the camaraderie of Campbell as a whole.
Yeah,
A lot of Kool-Aid to drink. It wasn't as bad as the Rakasans.
yeah.
But I enjoyed my time at Campbell. Yeah, I liked the helicopter operations because you didn't have to ruck everywhere and you didn't have to deal with the strikers. It was pretty good. And then that's finally when I got to go to air assault school. I tried to go my whole time, and I got to go when I got to Campbell, but went after deployment, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got there, did a little train up, and then went to holiday block leave, Christmas, and then came back in January and deployed again. That time we went to Iraq and we were in Mosul.
Okay.
So
this is like 2017?
2019.
2019.
Yeah. So we had Easton, she was pregnant when I left there, when I deployed there. And then Easton was born on June 13th, and I had been over there for like 6.5 months by then, 6 months or so. So she did that one alone. We had a friend that was at Campbell that was a friend that we had made at Drum when we were there first time. And she helped her with the other kids, and she was there for her in the hospital when she was in labor, and she actually got to cut the cord for Easton. So she's the like automatic godmother pretty much for him.
Shout out, like, I think it's a big deal. Like spouses, a lot of military spouses get shit on because they like a lot of times it's the dependent shit, like, or whatever, but like some people throw the rank around, but you don't see the other side, like we were talking about, like the other side where a lot of these like wives, like they're putting their lives basically on hold to be a mother, single mother, dealing with so much craziness that they did not really ask for.
Absolutely.
Like, and you know, they say like, well, you signed up for it. It's like they didn't sign up for a lot of this stuff. Like nobody can tell you how crazy it is. So I just want to, it's insane to me the amount that military wives put in for the kids, you know.
Oh yeah, the ones that like stick it out and like deal with it at all.
Yeah,
like they're all saints, all of them. But like if they go through multiple experiences all the time apart, like it's like for the most part they're borderline single mothers for a majority of the time.
Yeah,
like especially like as a drill and like the deployment on and off. It's they're saints. It's like they do it all alone. It's like, well, I know my wife's been alone the majority, over half of my time in the Army. She's been alone. So
yeah.
So she's they're definitely next level savages.
How was the this is your fourth deployment, 2019.
Yeah.
Iraq, Mosul.
Yeah.
How is it?
So we were, if you look at like a map, there's a bend in the Tigris where it cuts through the northern part of Mosul.
Yeah.
And like right there's a couple big palaces that were part of Saddam's family, and they had a thing. There's like a little base called the Nineveh Operations Center, the NOC.
Yeah.
That was built off of one of Saddam's sister's palaces, and we had like fighting positions up on the roof of that. And that deployment was literally just basically Uber Eats for the battalion commander. We just kind of did the Force Pro thing, pulled the guard, and then did patrols throughout Mosul, taking him to like the police chief. And we went up to the big dam north of Mosul that supplied water in the reservoir for all that area. We went east into some towns and then all the way over to like Kurdistan. To do some stuff, and then we went west for a couple trips to do. There was a town called Kocho, where the Department of State was doing some stuff, some press stuff.
Yeah.
Because whenever ISIS invaded, they basically mowed down this entire town of men and boys, basically, and buried them in one mass grave. Well, they were digging them up and giving them proper burials. So we went out there and like secured their area because there were some fairly high level Department of State people that were coming out for it. So we had to go deal with that. And that was like a 5-hour drive across Iraq to get there. It wasn't bad. It was pretty cool. But that whole thing, the whole time there was like, it felt political because our biggest, like you were dealing with, they claimed ISIS, but it felt like the Iranian, I think they call them like the Popular mobility force or some shit like that. We just called them the PMF, but they were like basically military contractors that were working there to secure the area.
Yeah.
Same thing we were doing, but they were trying to get the primary focus of being like the sole ones there and working to get Americans out. So they were like obstructing movement, and they would stop us at places, and they know how we operate. We've been there for so long. They'd like roll through and record you, and like with their cell phones, and like they'd be posting shit on Twitter about, you know, like them doing stuff to like America like trying to flex on them. And they were basically trying to, it felt like a propaganda war where they were trying to portray us as like the bad guys.
Yeah.
And they would do like shows. We called it like a show of force. Essentially, they would like roll up with like, they had like these Chevy Silverado, they're like 3500s.
Yeah.
And they'd have like Dishkas, and like they had one that had an
mounted
anti-air,
on the back and
mounted
shit.
on them, like their technicals and stuff.
Yeah.
And they would flex with that stuff, trying to get us to react to them, to make us look like we were there as a hostile force. So they, when the election came around, they're soon to vote whether America stayed in there or left. They were trying to get us to make us look bad so we could leave, and then they would have the run of Iraq and the oil and all that other shit.
Yeah.
That whole war, just that whole time there, it was just like super political.
Yeah, you were talking about that earlier. It sounds political as fuck.
It was wild, man. It was nothing like Afghanistan. Like Afghanistan was like waiting on the Wild West to kick off.
Yeah,
and this was just like, it all felt like a giant publicity stunt, and like they were just trying to portray you as the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you don't want us to be here. Why the fuck are we here? Like, but I mean, it was cool. Like, we saw some beautiful areas for a bombarded city. Like, there's some really cool, like, historical, like, biblical structures and locations that are in that area.
Well, Iraq used to be a tourist spot back in the 60s.
Oh, yeah, there was a massive hotel there that was like 5-star. And that thing was, we went in it, but there was a JDAM had went through the middle of it.
Oh, shit.
But it was like destroyed, but like there was still like, it was like marble staircases and stuff in it. And I mean, so the palaces that we were in, like we would go through the palace to go upstairs to where like we had the fighting positions. Yeah. So, because like from there you had like a bird's eye view of the entire city. So you would go up there to get to like your team or whatever was up there. If you were the SOG or Sergeant of the Guard for the night, or the day, whatever shift, and like it was all marble staircases and like beautiful fountains and stuff, and it was like just riddled with like shrapnel and bullet holes and just destruction from all the bombs. It's like, couldn't imagine what it was like before.
Before all the shit went down,
it just got lit the fuck up. Yeah, but it was beautiful. But yeah, it was interesting. It was definitely an interesting experience, and it was the same thing with like the Iraqi. We were right there with the Iraqi forces, and they felt it. I got the same vibe from them as the Afghans. The way it was all about status and getting a paycheck, because you could see like their non-commissioned officers and all their enlisted people were like still skinny and like just wearing like the bare necessities, and they'd have like their mag pouches stuffed with like socks and cardboard to make it look like they had stuff, but they didn't. Yeah. And like their officers were all fat as shit.
Can I ask you? I want to ask a question because I've heard this a lot. NCOs I hear in the Army, like U.S. Army, are really we're the only military force kind of in the world that uses NCOs the way we do, right? Or did you see that in your experience or no?
The closest I have seen out of all my experiences was probably the Australians. Yeah. The Australians operated, I don't think they don't have as much authority, I guess, or they're not entrusted with as much as we are, but Australians kind of operate in the same aspect.
Did the other ones just like, is the officer supposed to be the one like no shit just leading everything? Yeah. And NCO is just a pay grade, like they're just, that's the time they've been in.
They're very, very much like that. Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it?
I even feel like in a way, the longer I'm in the Army, I noticed that amongst us as well. There's some people, I'm not going to say any names, but there's some individuals that are senior NCOs that I would consider to be NCOs. They're very, very solid, whatever level of NCO they are. And then there's there's some that are just a pay grade. They're there to collect a paycheck and get a bullet.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
While certain ones like carry the brunt of everything, and they are like what an NCO should strive to be, and like something to look towards for a senior non-commissioned officer.
Yeah, I think that's hard because it's like I also feel like the NCO thing of NCOs being like the backbone and like officers being nothing, that changed really after this Vietnam, because during Vietnam before, officers were still like very hard-headed, hard charging, like dudes that wanted to get shit done. But then it all transpired to this thing where NCOs became like the worker bees, and officers just kind of ran the behind the scenes shit, and it didn't really matter. I think it's just a weird thing that I noticed have not only has our history changed that, but around the world, everybody else sees officers as like this glorified thing, whereas really the only people that see it for what it truly is the enlisted.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Army. The Navy's the same way. The Coast Guard, I don't fucking know, but Marines, Navy, and Air Force, it's all very similar.
Yeah.
So it's just odd.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah, wholehearted. I think a lot of it, like stemming back to like Nam, like you were talking, I think a lot of it's because officers they only expected to live like a lieutenant, and Nam was only
2 minutes?
expected it was short.
Yeah.
And like NCOs were there, they had to be, and like that was the only continuity that the platoons had.
Yeah.
Because the lieutenants were dying so fast, so they had to look to something, and like that kind of. I mean, you got dudes who, like, if it's a sergeant first class, it's like the right-hand man to a lieutenant. But the sergeant first class has been in for, 16, 17, 18 years with multiple deployments. That's the experience and the leadership you need to guide that lieutenant. And if you have lieutenants or officers who won't listen to their non-commissioned officers, or at least, like, involve them in planning and coordination, then it's you better have plan B, C, and D in effect before you step off, because you're going to be there pretty fast.
Yeah. If you look at the awards too for the past I would say 30 years, the percentage of NCO to officer, and I know awards are sometimes bullshit, but when you look at Silver Stars and Medal of Honors, there's a purpose for them. You look at them, I would say 90% are enlisted at this point, and then some are officers, but a lot of them are special forces too. Like it's like SEALs, SF, Rangers, whatever, where it's a few and far between. But I digress. I got a little off topic there. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I like that topic of NCOs versus officers. So you get through this deployment. This one went pretty smooth too, as far as family time.
Yeah, we had pretty good. I mean, by the time the war was over, there was pretty good infrastructure throughout everywhere we were at. So
yeah. Was this still 2019 when it ended for you?
Yeah,
or?
we came back. We left in January and came back like October of 19, right before Halloween.
Yeah.
So we were able to reach home. We didn't lose anybody. No casualties. So we were able to contact home and like talk to family, and like we were good.
Yeah, by then they had kind of Wi-Fi and everything built
they had Wi-Fi everywhere, and like you could get these little sapphire little pucks, dude, and you could get internet anywhere.
Yeah.
I
never got one, but everybody that had one, they loved it. They thought it was like
you could just pay for like a monthly subscription, and like I used it like coming back, I'd pay for like a day.
Yeah.
So you could do it anywhere, and it was great. But so she had Easton while I was over there, and he was born in June. I was on SOG that night. Damn. And my first sergeant was in there, and he had an internet service through the Iraqis that he was able to play Overwatch online from his office. And I was in
Overwatch.
There, yeah, dude.
He's playing Overwatch.
Yeah, I was in there at like 3:00 in the morning and like FaceTiming her, and she's in labor, and I had like the radio sitting right there next to me at the talk and all this shit. And first sergeant comes up, he's like, "Is she in labor right now?" And I'm like, "She is." And he's like, "Give me the radio." And he took off,
Jesus.
and he took over my SOG shift so I could FaceTime her through labor.
That's dope. That's cool.
And like all my dudes were pissed whenever we got done.
Why are they pissed?
Because I didn't tell them that first sergeant was coming to
Oh.
SOG. And they were like,
Oh, no.
It was like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're up there in their fighting positions or their little towers at the gates, and first sergeant comes walking in, and I had one as I'm not gonna say his name, but I had one dude who was a character. He's like, Sergeant, what the fuck? He's like, first sergeant come walking in and talk to me for like 3 hours. And I'm like, hopefully you didn't say anything bad.
Yeah.
Like, please be in full kit.
Please be in full kit.
But yeah, it was interesting. It was pretty cool. It was a good company. It was a good I guess last deployment to kind of wrap up my time. And then since I had the baby, they knew that was going to happen while I was there. So they sent me out on Torch on like the initial flight to get out there.
Oh, yeah.
So whenever I came back,
you were the
sure
first to come back.
Again.
Yeah.
So I got back. He was what, 3 months old, I guess, by the time.
Damn.
3, 4 months old when I came back and met him. Real easy travel home. It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And then pretty much, I guess did a couple training things after that at Campbell and went to air assault school. Got to finally go do that after 10 years in the Army. Not even 9 years, I guess. And then I started doing the math, and my platoon sergeant even talked to me about it. He's like, you better start thinking about what you want to do for your broadening because it's coming.
Drill
And
a
I
recruiter.
looked, and I'm like, man, my time on station and my squad leader time is all going to wrap up around the same time. And so I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do. And then when I went up to talk to the school guy, I had already been DA selected for drill.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, when's my date? And he's like, you're going in, I think I went in July. I graduated in August or September. So he's like, you're going here. So they automatically, my squad leader time was done. So they pulled me from that. So I basically I worked with a bunch of other, I was a weapon squad leader. So I worked with a bunch of other weapon squad leaders within the battalion. And we kind of built up we called it a machine gun university.
Yeah, just to train up for new dudes.
Yeah, it was like a week and a half long of the new weapon squads to prepare them for like the future training cycle, and like made pretty good product and like put it on a share drive so it would carry
Good
forward.
continuity. That's what it's all about.
It was pretty cool. We did that, and then we all had like a certain aspect of it we had to teach, and it was good. It turned out pretty well. But then I got done with that. Went to drill.
I wanted to ask real quick because you had all this time training and stuff like with infantry, like it's Army task. It's bare bones. Like what you see is what you get. Infantry shit. What was your favorite part of like training all that stuff?
I really enjoyed anything in the field. I loved being in the field. I love my job. It's the garrison shit that drives me nuts. I'm listening, I promise. I loved being in the field, and when we could go do like our FTXs and work out like basically anything. I like setting in the machine guns. Doing platoon operations and raids was probably my favorite. I loved like the individual movements of the weapon squad and the low crawling to get into position, trying to settle in without being spotted. All of that was pretty fun.
Okay, and like I was telling you, we had a little gap there, but I think it's so cool. Like we were talking about training with the boys, like on the platoon level, like getting them, you teaching stuff that you've dealt with, and they are like clueless on, and then you see them grow on it is such a beautiful thing. Yeah,
watching like using what you've done and your experience and like the experience of your peers, because like in that platoon, that was probably, besides my first platoon I was ever in that I deployed with, that platoon had the most experience I think I've ever deployed with.
Yeah.
As far as like my peers, like 'cause it was my fourth deployment, and then there was another staff sergeant that was there with me. It was his fourth deployment. The platoon sergeant was on his third, I think.
Yeah.
And then we had he was a sergeant, but he was a prior service Marine who had deployed twice, so he was on his third deployment.
Jesus.
So like that that deployment, we were working with a lot of like MARSOC was there at the little
you were telling me about that.
Yeah, I told you about that at work. But the MARSOC guys were there, the Raiders, and I don't remember what unit we relieved, but they weren't working with them. But when they saw us with the 101, they were like, "We'll use you guys," and we went and kind of the same thing that we did with the SF guys in Afghanistan. We were going with
that security and stuff.
Yeah, we would cordon. But in Iraq, we were cordoning off like this mountain range.
Yeah.
That there was a lot of, just kind of like rat holes and mole holes throughout it where they were caching weapons and supplies.
Yeah.
And they were raiding it, but every time they'd raid, they'd just kind of squirt out the different holes around the mountain and just disappear. So we were helping kind of contain as much of it as we could. And basically, you would just kind of like shoot to drive them back into it.
Yeah.
So the raiders could get to them.
Yeah,
they were trying to capture them.
Yeah.
We were trying to do what we could to shoot, not to kill, but unless they were like shooting at us, but just you had to defend yourself. But most of it was just trying to deter their movement and keep them stuck in the hole. So it was interesting. It was fun, and working with MARSOC was pretty cool. Those guys, just a whole nother level of like high-level trained dudes like the SF guys that you don't get to work with often with MARSOC because of the different branches. But they had some cool toys, and they were cool dudes to work with, and it was fun.
Joint training is always like the coolest. Like NATO training and joint training is always like a very fun experience, and you would learn a lot from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a good thing to broaden your horizons, and learning their tactics. It gives you a different perspective on the way you can do things, and a whole other way to look at it. Makes you better.
What so you got the drill thing going now?
Yeah, kind of over. I just finished my third year basically.
Yeah. Let's dive into it. How was it? Tell me.
It was rewarding, and it was a shit show all at the same time. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. I loved parts of it. A lot of teaching. The first 2 years I did BCT here at Fort Leonard Wood. The BCT life is just a lot of hours, a lot of teaching. I kind of typically spearheaded the tactics, anything tactic related, or the rifle marksmanship, or like land navigation.
Yeah.
Was always kind of what I went after. I let the other drills handle DNC because DNC sucks.
Yeah.
But I always went after RM pretty hot and heavy, trying to get them on that. And whenever you take kids that had never shot or never did anything tactically or didn't know anything about the woods or land nav, and you could see them like not really like be stellar at whatever, but like improve over time and get better and go on to qualify and like achieve things that they didn't think they could do. It was kind of rewarding in a way, I guess you could say.
Obviously I can relate a little bit, not in that sense because I was at AIT, but I know what you're talking about where like you instill some of this stuff and you're wishing for it to grow and you see a little bit of it sprouting and you're like, oh, you know what? I kind of did some of that. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. And I'm glad I could influence someone in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like as much time as you put into them, you don't want to see them fail, you know? It's like I'm here.
Absolutely.
I'm here at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm here until 9 o'clock at night. It's like I don't want you to fail. Otherwise, I failed you.
Yes.
Like if you suck, that's a direct reflection of me. Yeah. So, I've never had the phone call, but you always hear how they're like, people get to their units and they're like, who the fuck was your drill sergeant? And it's like, I don't want any of mine to be that kid.
Yeah.
I want them to go where they're going and be at least as good, if not better, than their peers who came from wherever else they came from. So I did what I could to make them, and I tried to put it into terms. I did doctrine, but I also gave them like
your spiel
affiliated with like and supported it with experiences and like logical stuff that would kind of make it make more sense or make it make sense for them.
Yeah.
To help them out. Because like doctrine, you read it, it's cut and dry, but it's kind of open to interpretation at the same time. So tried to help them be the best you could, and then did 2 years of that. I think I got started doing that, and right after Thanksgiving in November of 2020. So COVID was kicking off pretty good. 21 was full COVID. And I think all throughout that one was everything with basically just getting the shots, making sure the privates had the shots, and facilitating movement when you could because like the timelines were so crunched. with like trying to keep them separated and
Mm-hmm.
spaced out and everything. It was kind of hard. And then it kind of slacked off a bit in 2020, especially towards the end of 2022, I mean, sorry. And then when I got hit with the third year, when I had to do a third year of it, they gave me the opportunity to switch over to AIT if I wanted for a different change of scenery, basically.
Yeah.
And I jumped on it, and so I met you.
Yeah.
And it's the third year doing what we're doing. It's kind of a fresh air. The all the training doesn't fall on you, and like with Delta, where we're at, it's kind of low impact anyway.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. Different experience.
Different.
Learning. Interesting learning the job of another MOS, because like I never really was around too many other MOSs, especially 74s.
Yeah.
So it's definitely cool coming to the Seaburn world and seeing the equipment you all have and like how you facilitate it, and when you go to the field, like the operations that goes into it for like the instance that like I never really thought about it, but like a nuclear war goes, like we're pretty much fucked.
Yeah.
Until we get to you guys.
It's not cool.
So
it's not cool.
It's definitely a good learning curve, and I met some cool people. So it wasn't bad. Just a busy 3 years.
And I don't want to. You know as well as I do, we don't want to dive down I'm not going to dig too deep into the drill stuff because it's a weird beast and not a lot of people understand it, so it's all good. I want to ask your plans for the future. You got a lot going on. Can you tell me about it and stuff? Just what general overview of what's about to happen for you?
Yeah, so we just shipped all the kids out. I'm done being a drill on December 31st, so I will start out 2024 as a staff sergeant again, not a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
I do not. So I went to SLC to be senior leaders course, for those of you who don't know, to be a sergeant first class, back in the spring, I guess. And they called I had to re-enlist, and it's the contract where I have to go saying I'm going to 20, and I'm at 11 years, so it's a 9-year enlistment with needs of the Army, so I don't get to pick where I go, and no duty station, no bonus, so my wife and I have thought about it for about a year, and we're deciding it's time to separate from the military. I'm wrapping up my bachelor's degree. I've been pursuing that for, I guess since 2010. Here we are. In Homeland Security, I've kind of branched into a cybersecurity sector as well as like counter intel, counter terror. Hoping to implement my military background with that on paper. And then I have basically an internship or a skill bridge thing set up with a company out of St. Louis that works along that and facilitates like cybersecurity systems to like quite a few federal agencies as well. And overall goal is I'm trying to get into the Geospatial Intelligence Agency in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
They have multiple positions, but there's a counter intel and officer position that I would try to get. So it's a GS thing, still federal, but a different focus than military tactics and stuff. Little more. I don't know. Little more. I don't have to move as much. I'll be here.
It sounds more robust and it sounds more fulfilling. You know,
something.
Solid.
I'm still helping to.
Yeah.
I have a purpose and like still hoping to hopefully help defend the country, but I won't be having to go to places that I don't feel like I'm doing anything anymore. So we'll see. Get some family time back and slow down a little bit. We'll see.
Cody, I love your story. I had a couple questions before we wrap this up. There's a back and forth question here. I had a question. What do you think the best part about our country is right now? And then what do you think the worst part about our country is right now?
Oh, God. Oh, man. What's good about the country? I think it's good. The country still has a lot of people that are willing to voice and stand up for what it was created for. They're there to back up what the Constitution means, and they're fighting for it. I think the worst thing about our country is basically the lack of education and willingness to learn and be open to other people's opinion that seems like a large number of the population has. Um, I feel like people just kind of take what they see on the news as a way to get their knowledge instead of diving into anything and researching stuff on their own and making their own decision. Basically, I feel like people let others make decisions for them, and it's leading to issues within the country. And we're not a united front, and that poses weakness in my eyes. From a tactical mindset, if you're not a united front like we were after September 11th, all the big events that ever happened when we had started major wars, America was like one united front coming after. We kind of had a common goal. And regardless of which side you were on, whatever it was, you could rally around the fact that we were attacked. We love America. We're trying to save it. And now we feel super divided, and you see it within the Army. You see it within the civilians. You see it within the trainees we're training, because they'll automatically segregate themselves based on whatever fucking faction they follow.
Yep.
And it's like, dude, like, you guys could be in a war next year. Like, what are you gonna do then? Like,
Yeah.
you better figure it the fuck out. And it's after doing as much as time as we've done in the Army, you and I both, it's just kind of heartbreaking. It's kind of like, what was it all for? You know,
Yeah.
It kind of feels like it was almost a waste. But got 4 kids born for no money, and I learned a lot. I grew a lot as an individual during my time. Coming in when I did, I thought I was pretty grown up. I was an adult, but after being in as long, I had a lot of growing up to do. I think I have grown up significant amounts from what I was, and I got a lot more growing to do still. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. I loved all that, man. I'm happy I had you on. I want to ask you like 20 other questions. Unfortunately, I don't want our kids to just wither away inside with our wives as they lose their minds. So I'll have you back on probably sometime. But I really appreciate you coming out here doing this. It was a joy to listen to your story, and I appreciate all your opinions and your viewpoints of what you talked about, man.
Thank you. It was a privilege coming out here. I've never done this. My wife and I have dabbled with the idea of trying to start one. She wants to do one that's like separated, like marriages where they're distant, like we have. I think she wants to call it intermittent marriage or something like that. It would be pretty cool.
I like that.
Yeah, it was a privilege doing this, and it was awesome. And thanks for the invite.
No problem, brother.
Really appreciate it.
I will hype her shit up too if she ever starts one. Or when she starts one, I will hype her up. Okay.
No, appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is definitely fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, brother. Take care. Hey guys, while we're on this break, I want to reach out. I know around this time of year, it's getting cold. We got the holidays coming up, Halloween, Thanksgiving. You know what I get? It's hungry. I get those home style foods going on. And what better way to crave that than Lakes Homestead Goods? Okay, it's actually ran by my wife, Danielle, runs it off her Facebook page, or you can reach out at 417-365-4993. She makes everything from homemade bread, whether it's cinnamon raisin and white bread, to butter, homemade butter, cookies, any type of thing you can think of. She's even working on other stuff right now. Reach out. She is the one to set you up with homemade products that are good and good for you. Thanks, guys.